We don't have to do this. I want you to know that.
What do you mean? What else are we supposed to do?
Nothing. We just go back to Tommy's. We forget about the whole damn thing.
After all we've been through, everything I've done, it can't be for nothing.
Welcome to The Last of Us, a podcast review of the HBO series The Last of Us. Every week we will review the newest episode in the series, give you our impressions from 4 different and unique perspectives, as well as our thoughts on how it holds up to the game. You can join in on the conversation by contacting us at thelastofyins@gmail.com. And remember, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. No?
Take 2. Up. Greetings from the ballpark, where it's Feed a Giraffe Night. That's right, all fans 14 and under get to feed a live giraffe, as opposed to dead ones, I suppose. I'm one of your hosts, Mal, and I have played all the games in the Last of Us series on which this TV show is based. Today, I am joined by...
Hi, this is Shannon. I've not played any of the video games, and I'm here representing that whole new audience of people who may never pick up a controller.
Absolutely. Next.
My name's Sean. I've played part 1. I will play part 2. Consumed a lot of content. Big fan of the show.
And I am Corey, and I'm just here because I'm pretty.
And I'd like to welcome our special guest and our musical intro maker, Wade Root, to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me out. I have played the first game. I am looking forward to playing the second one, but it's been like 5 years, so.
Okay, well, then it's all going to be a mystery, right?
Exactly.
This week, we question our morality and play a game of Boggle as we discuss the season finale of Last of Us, Look for the Light. This also completes the phrase that started the first episode, when you're lost in the darkness. So this is the bookend to that phrase. Directed by Ali Abbasi and written by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. Music by Gustavo Santaolalla. That's a very hard name to say.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Yeah.
They even refer to him as Gustavo. I think they kind of...
I just say Gustavo because it's very easy to say Gustavo.
Unique enough.
As always, how we do things here each week, we break down and discuss the latest episode of The Last of Us, what we like, what we don't like, how it holds up to the game. What we won't discuss is any future spoilers about future seasons or the game's sequel. No next time on preview at the end, because there is no next time as of yet.
Bro, I think you just accidentally invented something glorious
The
there.
next of us.
Next of us.
Next of us. There you go. Before we get into the deep dive, what was your Yin's guys' overall thoughts on the episode?
That was a tough one.
Tough one?
Yeah, particularly for Shannon, I was very interested in I was kind of watching her because, we who have all played the first game had a pretty good idea of what was coming.
Yeah.
So when we come to the end of that episode, do you feel any changes about your viewpoints on our
Don't get too deep into it because
just
Real quick, right after the episode, I was really excited. Everything that I wanted to happen happened.
Cool.
Hadn't really thought hard about, the consequences.
Yeah.
Until Corey did say something to me, and I went, "Oh, I was still too excited to have really thought harder about the consequences." And now that I've spent the entire week conflicted.
Yeah.
There you go. Now you're a Last of Us fan.
Yeah.
When
now
I
you
finished
understand.
The Last of Us, the first game,
You got to get all up in there on that, Mike.
I got into a conversation with Corey about it, and it made me... one of my most vivid memories was that game does not leave you feel warm and fuzzy when it's over with. You don't feel real great about things. I remember saying that to him in this episode. Did that. It definitely recreated that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and playing the game and knowing what would happen, I honestly, until they said it was the last episode, I was like, you're not going to finish all of that in one episode. There's no way. And I'm like, wow, I will never question how fast you can get through a story in an hour.
Yeah, when you take out scrounging for equipment and things like that, it cuts out a lot of time.
Yeah, it was an especially short one too. It was only like 47 minutes
shortest
long.
of the season.
Yeah.
They really put a bow on that. But in the game, it was such a shell shock. I'm like, oh, all that happened. And like watching it, there was a lot more time to process my emotions. And I'm like, Damn. Okay. All right. Well, we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Not only that, but I think there's and we can go into this in more depth later, but there's a very different connection to this media when you're watching it.
Yeah.
I think it's different when you're attaching yourself in the place of the person that's doing the things, right? Especially with so many games today allowing you to make the decisions. And so like sometimes you'll test to see like how effed up can you be. And I remember that just being a
I usually choose the
situation
other thing.
where you're kind of driven into a corner and being like, yo, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You know, like
Exactly.
it was a very uncomfortable and unsettling feeling. The Last of Us is an experience of a game, and it's art. It is not a fun time. You know, this is not a summer blockbuster. This is, you know, like
He's
gonna
making
win
you
all the
feel
awards.
something.
It's a thinker.
Definitely.
Yes.
And a feeler.
Absolutely. Speaking of feels, the recap at the top of the show that went through the entire season, I was a mess right off the bat because it's just like all those touchstones they're hitting, everything. I'm just like, oh, this is just that little package. Whoever edited that together, I was just like right on board with that, and I was so prepared for this opening scene. We do a cold open here with a very pregnant woman running through the forest, who we later learn is Anna, played by
Ashley Johnson.
Yes, who we'll learn more about her here as we talk. Running
Juno. If
What's
you
that?
didn't know, she's Juno.
Yeah, exactly. Running through wooded area.
She's not.
So real quick.
Yes.
I thought that somehow they flashed forward 10 years. This was Ellie.
You did.
It looked
Yeah.
so much like a grown Ellie. That's now because I didn't have this background information. You
Yeah.
guys know better.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it better. So I really did think that that was Ellie. So interestingly, that the person who voiced Ellie in the video game could possibly be the mother of, it is the mother of Ellie and her name's escaping, Bella Ramsey.
They do, honestly, without, I can't say that they look like twins or anything like that. But they have similar facial markers, the longer bridge in the nose, the sweep around the eyes, that sort of always astonished look on their faces. There is something kismet between the appearance of these two people, you know?
Right, right.
Hey, Wade, I know that you're a better on the computer than I am at like production stuff. If you could take the moment, what is it, Video Game Awards or whatever,
Yeah.
where the actors meet themselves, and you could dub "I'm my own grandpa" over top of it, I would just really appreciate it.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know how to respond to
You don't
that.
remember
Right.
that? I'm my own grandpa.
Nope, I ain't got nothing.
Fair enough.
Not a song
knew
I'm
what you were
familiar
talking
with, but I
about.
bet it's
Tom
hilarious.
I guess before I even
Okay.
begin the breakdown here, because I do want to talk about this, and it seems like a good time as any, is when I saw the production stills of her in this. There was
Okay.
the opening before the show came out. There was a picture of her holding a baby, and I was like, oh, I know who that is. I know who Ashley Johnson is, and I see the production stills. Did not prepare me for what I would feel seeing her play this part. When she's running, and it sounds weird, but the noises she's making as she's struggling through the woods are the same noises that the character makes when you're playing the game. It's Ellie's,
it was
Ellie's
her
voice.
voice.
Yeah,
And you
close
hear
your
this, and
eyes.
I hit
That's
pause, and I'm
Ellie.
like, this is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm so excited to see her. I knew she was going to be in it. Didn't know it would hold all the way to the end. And I'm just like, I had to stop and go, this is so fucking awesome. Exactly. That was me. All on my couch. Just
They had Ashley Johnson on the accompanying podcast this week, and it's so cool to sit there and listen to these creators talking to the character. You know, it sounds like you're talking to Ellie on the radio because there's no visual to go with it. It's just very cool to hear that back and forth, hear the character commenting on her own thing. And this made me think of something that we had with a conversation I had with Wade a long, long time ago. He said that he didn't like things that made him look for other content to enjoy. And I wanted to know, did you feel like you needed to have background in this to enjoy it?
In this particular episode
Specifically, yeah.
Since it's been so long since I played the game, I rather did not pay attention if they ever said how or why Ellie was immune, and like the
it's never mentioned explicitly in the game.
yeah, that's
ever.
what I thought. So the fact that they did like do that helped, and seeing that rise of it, I don't feel like there were any questions left after watching that. I didn't feel like I had to go online and look for more information. But to touch on what you said about like that was her voice, what made it even cooler is, you know, usually when people voice act, they're voice acting. Like that was like legit her voice. That's
Yeah.
just her talking. So when she was like in that scene and the grunting and the noises, I'm just like, this is really weirdly familiar because I didn't know it was her until the end. So I didn't look.
Oh, you did not recognize her as the actress?
No,
Oh, wow,
and I
cool.
was like, huh, wait a minute, like my nostalgia triggered, and I couldn't find out why until I saw the making of the episode, and I was like, oh, that
makes
makes
all the sense now.
so much
Yeah.
sense.
Before we get too far away from it, I just want to point out that on the primary podcast, it went like an hour longer than the episode, which we've talked about never trying to do here. And also, half of it was for this scene.
Yeah.
This was so important.
So like, there was a point where I was considering going like, hey, do we want to do a wrap up, like an overcap episode? But since we haven't discussed that beforehand, like, I mean, it's the last one. You know what I mean? So, like, if you guys want to go hard,
oh yeah, well,
I'll be drinking over here in the background.
I know the end
so
of this
I'm down
podcast
for
will be
it.
us kind of reviewing everything, so look out for that.
Let's let Ed start our journey.
Yeah, let's get that.
Yeah. I'll just continue on from there. I mean, it's pretty obvious what we're talking about. If you've seen the show, why would you listen to this podcast if you weren't? But you know, she's running through the forest. Yeah, she escapes across the field, which this house looks like something else that you may see in the future. I don't know. Just saying. Anyway, she's running across the field, and this house, I don't know if you noticed this, there is a Firefly logo on the silo.
Yes. I did notice.
Yeah. She walks into the house, and she actually announces herself like, is anybody here? It's me, Anna. She's thinking someone's there to help her. Obviously, she finds out she's not. She scrambles up to the top floor, at which point she discovers her water's broken, and she's just looking for anywhere to try to take refuge and do what she needs to do. She barricades herself in a room with a chair. She takes out her knife, which brought back these hot D flashbacks. Do you guys watch House of Dragon?
Yeah.
Yes.
The most horrific birth scenes you've ever seen in TV
Oh,
shows.
man.
She pulls out that switchblade. I'm like, oh, what the fuck is going to happen?
How dark is this going to get?
And then you realize she's using it for defense. And this thing, you hear it wandering around downstairs as a clicker or infected or something downstairs. And the way just like up them stairs. And it's beating on the door. And she's here struggling with everything in her head. Yes.
I've never heard anybody pronounce it that way before, and now we have to cover that show just so we can have the Hot D podcast.
A hot D? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I was like, yo, that's something very different.
Who wants some hot D?
I spelled it out in my head, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm with you.
It's the acronym they use online so you don't have to spell it House of the Dragon every time.
We're going to get a lot of unintentional listeners.
So that infected, you think was a clicker?
Well, it was a runner of some sort. It was some sort of infected. I didn't
They called it
identify
a
it.
clicker on the primary
they?
podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
There
it
you
was a
go.
clicker.
I did not catch that it was a clicker.
It looked like a runner to me.
Who am I? I don't know.
Yeah. Whatever we call it, it was fast.
Yeah.
It booked up them steps like nothing.
Float like a runner, sting like a clicker.
Exactly. It comes to the door and it does attack her, at which she's able to scramble back to her knife. And during the scuffle, not only does she get bit, but she also gives birth. Now, this moment where she picks Ellie up and starts talking, it crushes me. It's very hard to talk about because I'm like, I just see this and I know what this is. I know who the actress is and I know who that is. And when she says, you fucking tell him, Ellie, I almost lose, not almost, what the hell am I talking about? I lose my fucking mind in
It's
my
a great
head.
line. Great line.
And that face-to-face where she's covered in sweat and they have the infant all just basically looking like it is a newborn. This is like a 3-week-old infant, I think they said. And I'm just like, this is the most, that camera's just right in on both of their faces, face-to-face. And I'm like, this is amazing.
They had 2 babies they used. They were twins, I believe, a boy and a girl.
Mhm.
And they laughed on the primary podcast that the girl was not only the better actor, the more cooperative, but she was cheaper because they didn't have to CGI out her wiener. Shannon,
I would have been real good for that.
you are the one of us that has had the opportunity to give birth. What's in your mind when you're
Opportunity.
watching this?
Oh, I wish I could have got them out that quickly.
I know that was, I knew she was going to say that.
Push.
She is really a force that she could defend herself, run, do all of these things, and then having the kid was the least stressful part of this experience for her.
Yeah.
And then to even know you got to cut that cord. And I mean, these are things that you'd be too fatigued and too like just it's got to be difficult to now. Obviously, evolution, women can do this, but not in this day and age.
Well, her only rush to cut that cord had to do with not wanting to spread the
infect.
infection.
And it is important to
right?
note that she does cut the cord after she's bit.
Which is, we presume, the vaccine, right?
Pretty much.
It is like the watered down version.
Yeah, we do find that out later that's probably why Ellie is immune. That cord was cut after the fact.
Without trying to slash never mind, we'll get into it.
We'll get in.
I don't.
Yes.
It's interesting because I since I played the game and knew the story and two different things. First, before they said, this is Ellie, and you're just like, oh, is this happening simultaneously to the timeline? Is this flashback? Whatever. I was like, is this baby about to jump scare me? I'm like,
clicker baby.
Yeah, I was like, what's
a
about
very
to
real
happen
threat. A very real threat.
Yeah,
what's gonna do? Gum you to death?
Right, and then after your name is Ellie. I'm like, oh, okay, it's a flashback.
Yo,
and
we're watching a show about an Ellie.
What a coincidence.
Anyways, so I realized that all this had to happen for the storytelling, but in my mind, I'm just like, okay, you're pregnant, you ran through the door, you boarded up. Why wouldn't you put your back against the door? I feel like you had a better chance of holding out whatever is coming.
I don't think.
Have you ever
No.
been present during a birth?
Yes.
Do you think that she had a mindset to be like, oh yeah,
Yeah, I'll give her a pass.
tactical?
Also, I think the door came off the hinges.
Yeah,
I
I
might
think
be
that thing was
mistaken,
going
but
right
I
through
think
the
it
fucking
came.
door.
Yeah.
I don't think her back against that door was going to stop them
No,
anyhow.
I think
so-
she was in a
Fair.
better, albeit compromising position. She was
I'm with
facing
him,
forward
though.
with a knife in her hand.
That's what I'd fucking do. Even if it was the dumbest move, I'd put this massive mine up against that door, even if it was a bad idea.
It's all baby weight.
pounds, you know what I mean?
I mean, that door might have just been paper for all we know, too. It might have come right through it if
That's
she'd have
true.
put pressure on it.
Well, I mean, as a TV set, so I'm sure it went.
This is one. I'm sorry. Did you?
Oh yeah,
go
and
ahead.
just also, since I was there for my daughter's birth, talk about a great birthing distraction.
Oh man,
It was like save my life. Oh, a baby, and I was like, huh, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, you certainly couldn't ask her and get a good, honest opinion of what having a baby's like. Her experience is slightly different.
Yeah, and again, that moment where she's obviously struggling. She's pushing as she's pushing things down. So it stands to reason that this would possibly just happen spontaneously.
I mean,
as
Shannon,
as horrible as that sounds.
What does that feel like in that moment? Like the muscle, the way things react.
Oh, we're going deep, baby.
I don't know.
I mean, I imagine it's probably similar to taking a big shit.
I was gonna
My
say.
question was more like, do you think
Could I just have a list?
we need a moment for that?
A list of 50 things I thought you were going to respond
That
with.
was not
That
on
was
a-
not on the list. at
No,
all.
it was not.
I have never been more proud of my wife.
Oh
right
man.
I didn't know what to say.
Here's the thing too, is she said that, I'm in my mind thinking the only thing I can really compare this moment to is when you got a little kid that's trying to bust into the bathroom and you're sitting on and trying to hold your door no, I'm doing a thing. You don't want to be in here. So I'm like, if you combine those,
Does it come out easier when you're struggling against the door?
I mean, it's harder to clean
Back
up.
to the show.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Wade.
Sean, rule
Face
number
palm.
one: don't ask questions that you don't want to know the answer to.
That's fair, but my question was severely misinterpreted.
It is funny, and this goes back to what you mentioned, that people did look, people who didn't know who this was, did say that she looked like Bella Ramsey. And I was just like, I guess, I mean, especially with the makeup and everything.
Very much. I
yeah.
was convinced probably up until she gave birth and named her Ellie. I thought that I might be watching future Ellie.
Is this
Oh,
what they
okay.
call meta? Is this because
oh,
I
this
don't
is
know what
very
meta
meta.
is?
This
Is this
is-
meta? Yeah.
This is Ellie giving birth to Ellie. This is 100% meta.
All right. I did it. Woo.
At that point, let's see. Oh, they go into the actual opening of the show. So they cut the cold open kind of in half. She has this moment with her newborn, and then it cuts to the opening credits, and then we jump forward. It looks like it's nighttime, so it's several hours later. Fortunately,
Several hours later.
she was bitten in the leg, so I guess it would take a while. We see a dude accompanied by Marlene. They come into the building. They don't know really what they're walking into. They hear her upstairs, and they walk in on this scene where she's holding the baby, saying she couldn't feed her. She didn't know what would happen, and she asked Marlene to take care of her. Marlene doesn't want to do this, and she's like, she swaddles her up in a jacket, which is a jacket that Ellie later wears. Gives her the knife that Ellie obviously has later on in the episode or in the series. And
it's a hell of a thing to give to a baby right there.
Exactly. But she's like, she's not going to need it, but Ellie will.
Sean, you just motivated me to get the the Game of Thrones. Shame, shame, shame. I'm gonna get that soundbite just for you.
Shame.
Did I turn my phone down? Is that what you're shaming me for?
Yes.
I swear to God I did. I don't know why it's doing it.
She's like, take the baby, and she intentionally like tells her the name. I think this is intentional to give her like a connection. Like, I'm gonna name the baby right now so that you are kind of guilted into, taking this baby. You okay?
Yeah, it's just kind of like in my head, it's a fucked up comparison because I think of like a parent and be like, "Oh, can we take Spot home with us?" It's like, "Oh no, don't name it."
Yeah, yeah, don't name it. The moment you name the baby, it's like, oh, now I got to take her.
Right.
Now I want to know the origin of that name.
Ellie?
Yeah. Why did Ashley Johnson's character choose it?
Anna.
Why does Anna choose it? I don't know. Maybe you should read the comic.
Maybe they were
There's a
going
comic?
Yeah,
alphabetically.
there's a comic.
I didn't know that.
What comes before L? I can go forward, but not
L.
backward.
You can't even spell the name, so what are you going to do with that?
I know.
What
not-
comes before L?
It's not Lily.
E.
Why?
D.
L?
In that name.
No, not alphabetically.
Delta.
D?
Yes.
D-E. All right, so,
What the hell?
yeah, no, you
I don't,
can't.
I don't know
yeah.
what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Woo, tequila.
she convinces her to take the baby, and she says, you're going to take her, and then you're going to kill me. And, she basically is like, I can't do that. She asks, how long have we known each other? She's like, all our lives.
Her not taking the baby was not an option. She'd have to be a pretty cold bitch to leave the baby behind with this woman who's going to, turn into
To
the
defend
infected.
that,
Yeah.
she doesn't know that she doesn't have to take this baby and murder it in 5 minutes because it's infected.
This
You
is
know what I mean?
where she mentions, and she's like, I cut the cord at, before.
Yeah.
And like, you're
Yeah.
lying.
Yeah, she
And-
definitely. I think Marlene called bullshit. Her eyes to me said, "I don't believe you," and then
Yeah.
she said, "Before." She
Yeah.
didn't give any more information. She stopped right there. Believe
again,
me,
it's-
that's all you have to do.
What would you have to fear? I mean, obviously it would be horrible to have to like put the baby down, but it's at the same time, it's like, well, I got to take her at her word at this point.
But
But-
who is gonna like? So the whole thing with the Fireflies is like they sneak in back and forth to Boston. Marlene's the head boss of the Boston QZ.
Mhm.
You have a crying baby. Like how
Spot on.
much difficult?
That's
more
probably
difficult.
part
is
of the
that?
reason. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a huge ask
Yeah.
to tell these soldiers, "I need you to take this baby."
And
Which
it-
is probably why she dropped that motherfucker at Fedra.
And it's this weird kind of almost like, I don't want to say guilt trip, but it's almost kind of guilt trip that kind of takes me back to episode 3 where he's like, he's talking to Bill. He's like, do you love me? Like, you're putting that out there. She says, how long have we been friends? She's using it in the same
Challenging
way
him, yeah.
to like, you got to do this. I'm going to be gone. You have to do this.
Yo, you're really getting meta now because it's also the episode with Ellie and what's her best friend's
Riley.
name.
Riley.
When Riley comes in and was like, "We're going to the mall, bitch."
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
she's like, "No," and that's kind
yeah.
of like,
do
the
you
same
care about me?
argument there
Yeah,
too.
yeah. It's very much,
Mhm.
they use that several times. That's a good
Yeah,
point.
good catch.
She does eventually take the baby. She initially refuses to kill her, and as she's walking away, this awful like scream that Anna's like, "Please, like, end me." It's like
Yeah.
this. It's so heartbreaking. She puts the baby in this dude's arms and says, "Cover her ears." And he had one job.
Yeah,
One
right?
job.
He didn't even try.
Didn't even try. Marlene
Probably
just
afraid of it
she
coming at him.
walks in there with authority, and boom, it's gone.
It wasn't authority, bro. It was pain.
It was. But
She
it's
knew
like,
she had to
I'm
do
gonna-
it, but she didn't want to do it. And I think I remember thinking that was the only way she was going to have the nerve. if she walked in there and hesitated or drew the gun slowly, it wasn't going to happen. She had to go in there, and that had to be the
I
first thing
heartily
she was doing.
affirm you're both correct, because
Yeah.
she needed to go in there with authority and rip that fucking Band-Aid off quick, because
Mhm.
that was her friend.
Absolutely.
I wanted that scene a little better, just so you could see more of Marlene's face when she had to make that decision.
I agree.
Yeah.
I
that
actually
whole
was
scene.
wishing for the same kind of little feedback from her, just a little bit more, because what ultimately happens to her, we need to care about her, and I think he's right. I think we needed to
Yeah.
give her a little more screen time.
Yeah. And again, I'm forgetting her. Is it Mara Dandridge that plays Marlene?
Yeah, the voice
Something like
actress.
that,
Yeah,
she's just crushing this. She's the only person from the video game who's playing her own character, and she is Marlene. That's just who she is, and she owns this. And later on in the show, she's absolutely crushing it.
Hey, can I take a quick second? I
Yeah,
just
sure.
thought of something that I saw today. As long as we're talking about voice actors and video games in that realm, can we just say rest in peace to Lance Reddick?
Yeah.
Who was an incredible voice actor in a ridiculous number of video games and other TV shows.
give me a title, man.
He
It's
was
like
in Horizon.
he's like the Samuel L. Jackson of video games.
John Wick.
Oh, he was going around on Facebook today. Did he pass away today?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what everyone was talking about. Yeah.
He was also the voice of Commander Zavala in Destiny 2, which I play religiously. So
Man, he was good. He's been
Can
in
I do the
movies too,
Family Guy
right?
joke?
Yeah.
no.
He's always sort of astonished at everything.
Yeah, and it's really cool because he would do TikToks and just fundraisers, and people would call him out to do Commander Zavala saying things, and he's just like Guardians, and like, oh god, his voice is just like, way
Dude, that
above
motherfucker had presence.
Yes, he did. Yeah. So yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So also,
Yes.
he had said about you guys were discussing, the feelings and having to ask a friend to do the other thing, whatever. But that it does have that parallel as far as the two best friends, her mom and Marlene, and then her and Riley, both having to off the other one.
Yeah.
And, in order to survive.
Or just make
in
a
this
huge
world.
sacrifice
Mhm.
on behalf of the other. Yeah. We go from baby Ellie to teen Ellie sitting in the back of a truck as Joel is scavenging for another 20-year-old can of Chef Boyardee for me.
A very dad Joel.
Yo, yeah,
very
very.
rolls.
Like 100% flip.
They
Mhm.
flip.
these roles.
Honestly, as much as I enjoyed it, like that might have been a little bit too hard of a
Yeah.
flip.
I loved it. I
It
think
was
they did it
really-
well.
Again, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I just felt like, yo, okay, overcompensating a bit.
We are given that some time has passed from the last episode, but not so much where she's over her trauma. Some people are pointing this out to something else, but I'm like, this is not teen trauma. This is what she went through with David.
I was hoping
Oh,
they would
yeah.
Absolutely.
like at least have a scene or something to show what she was dealing with, because they really never said. She was just quiet and like distant.
Yes.
Bro,
But
she almost got raped in a burning building
But
by
let
a
me slow
preacher in
you
the zombie
down.
apocalypse.
That happened a week ago. We're distant from that. Sorry, Wade, I'm with you, dude. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like it was so far ago. They needed some sort of reference there. They needed a
Yeah.
flashbacks, maybe a rage face or something to that scene where she was chopping down something to
Yeah.
say, this is why she is disturbed right now.
I
Because-
think.
okay.
Oh no! Just let me jump in real quick. I think it's just because this whole scene with her and a very over exuberant Joel is
Mhm.
that way of showing that. Like
Yeah.
she is
Yeah.
completely down in the
Total
shit.
personality
A-
candy flip.
Yeah, and we're want to believe that she's been like this for however long it's been. Now they don't give us an explicit example, of course, like you're looking for, but I can see where you'd want that. But I think that's what their intention with these opening scenes is.
That makes sense, I guess, when you say it that way. Like when I watched it
Mhm.
and how like the stuff with Anna and all that happened, and then the direct cut to Ellie, I just assumed she had some flashback of remembering something that happened with her mom. Like so, like having a scene that would have like touched on that would have like helped me make more sense of like where
we were.
Ellie's mind was in that situation.
Did you get to that place eventually while you were watching, though?
Not till the end.
Okay, well, here's the thing for me. So I agree with both of you that would have been like a powerful, like, hey, here's where we're going. However, for me, the way that it hit for me, it was like, oh, look, they're back together again and shit is all happy. And then like my stomach kind of slowly got that drop back into the like, oh yeah, dude, like this kid's got PTSD
Mhm.
right now. Like as much as every aspect of her life has been terrible, like the pinnacle of that terribleness has just passed. And so, you know, teenage issues aside, as a parent of two teenagers, and one of them that we've gone through some drama with, like I could tell you that shit is present, apocalypse or no, fucking crazy shit or no. So like that slow realization of like, oh shit, you know, like that I think that gradual weight brought me into it. Now I think what you guys are talking about is a valid point, and I think that could have worked well also. But from the way that I took it, and I think it was like almost a little more dreadful because it was like a slow burn.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out why she is, like your brain is kind of leaking into that information, and it's letting you slowly capture that feeling yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, the earlier episodes, what we were watching was very much the opposite. Ellie was bouncing all around trying to form a relationship with this bear that just had no interest in this child, and she was cargo.
She was cargo.
And now we're watching. We used to be buddies. Let's do that again. Remember whenever
Well,
you used to come
Yeah,
at me
so
all the time?
He was
Sean,
not willing.
exactly on that point. I was curious, is that a development for the characters in this game?
Yes.
Yes.
They kind of swap places in.
Joel's a lot more sedated. Like he's not so. What did you say? Dad mode?
Yeah, not super dad mode.
Yeah.
Although I will say, like, that's acting chops right there, because I felt that moment of like when you're screwing around with the kid and mom's in the other room and you guys get a little bit too rough, and then like you might
No.
hurt the kid a little bit. And you're like, oh, look at this joke that you like,
Oh,
yo,
man.
cheer up and shit. I was like, yeah,
That's
I feel
exactly what he's doing.
I've witnessed it in person, Corey. Just,
Yeah.
twist the arm a little too far. It's okay. Remember when we were going to go fishing tomorrow?
that. It's like, laugh it off, buddy, laugh it off.
And
Don't
this-
tell mom, she'll take these away.
Mhm.
And it does go down like this in the game. It goes from that scene to her. She's not sitting on the back of a truck, but she's sitting in the building that we later come to, basically, just sitting there completely sullen. And you can tell he's trying to get her involved and, not necessarily cheer her up, but just engage with her. And
Where's
she's not
Ellie?
engaging.
Where's my Ellie?
Well, it's also showcasing his turn, right? Because that turn happened very
The boggle?
recently. Well,
I love the
not
boggle so
only
much.
that, but like the Bad Puns book,
Yeah.
like him encouraging her, because they're in very different places, and that's I think what Shannon said, right? Of like the flip flop of all of a sudden she's quiet and she hits this moment of trauma and going to a introverted place at the same time that Joel is now going, F it, I'm taking my walls down. You are my family. I accept you. I'm going to embrace this relationship. So you have this kind of negativization, is, if you will. I don't know.
A
how
yin
to-
and a yang.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but it's flipping spectrums,
Yeah.
right?
Crisscrossing.
Like he was black and she was white, and now we're going back. Like they're both pulling
The
U-turns.
poles are flipped.
Yeah, and like I really feel that kind of awkward
I got
moment.
more to add to that later as we develop through
Cool.
this.
I like that tease, Wade.
Nice.
He's a pro.
I do like how he says, if you want to beat me at something, this is the game, the boggle game, the word game. He's like, I'm not a word man, apparently.
Either that or is there a game about how dams or siphons work? Because
Yeah.
that she would probably
She
probably
might
do
actually
well.
have an advantage on him there. Joel's trying to keep her attention. He talks about seeing a broken guitar in there, and he's like, I should find one. I'd really like to play again. I could teach you guitar. And this is something that's mentioned in
Easter
the game
egg?
as well. Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
much a game
Doesn't
thing.
he actually? Oh, maybe that's from the later part. Then-
There are more references to the guitar in the future.
yeah. Okay.
He's just trying to engage her as best as he can while she's just not really paying attention. She's completely in her own head. They head down an alleyway, and they're trying to figure out how they're going to get past a building. And
This is funny. Yeah.
I know he starts to talk, and she's like, "We're going to cut through that building, get around this stuff, and find a skyscraper to look around." And he's like,
No, I found some dynamite. We're gonna blow that up, and we're gonna go through that way. And she's like, "Really?
Really?
It's like-
She looked so excited.
and he's like, "No, we're going to cut through that building and find a skyscraper and take a look around."
Yo, I've been that guy.
This shows their relationship. They're on the same page mentally when it comes to attacking this next goal. So I thought that was cool. I like that.
Yeah, it showed their her development with like learning his tactics and
Yeah.
how to survive. It's cool that they had just like that one line that's shown like how with it they are, in sync they are.
How long have Joel and Ellie actually been together at this point?
In the game, it's like 2 years.
I think
not
it's the better part of like a spring to winter and then back to spring is when they find. I think it's about
That would be a year.
They met in fall.
It was
Mhm.
okay.
It was September of 2023.
Okay, so then, oh yeah, you're right. Because then
So-
this would be like a year and a half, maybe past that. Because I think the game ends on spring.
I mean, that's a long way to go with somebody across a country where everything wants to kill you.
And
Yeah.
like the distance alone, like Boston all the way to where are they? Salt Lake, Utah.
Yeah,
And we get those beautiful insights through the series of how they interact with each other. The scene in the forest whenever they're, building or not building a campfire, and just the interactions on the road. It was all very reminiscent of the game. I loved it.
absolutely.
You don't like coffee?
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Still tastes like shit.
They come to this building and they're searching for a way through. I guess they're trying to actually try to get up. Joel discovers a ladder. As soon as I see this ladder, I'm like, here's the second thing I know that's happening in this episode.
I believe I paused to tell Shannon
What'd you tell her?
in this moment to be like, this is like a thing that happens all the time where this scene will start, then you got to push triangle to give them a boost.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
boost,
The
yep.
boost.
Yeah.
I got super
That's a naughty
disappointed
dog.
in a previous episode because there weren't no fucking ledges, and I got my ledge. I was stoked.
Get your ledges. You just don't get your naughty dog yellow paint to
Yeah,
tell you
where
where the
was
ledge
my
is.
Right. The
Oh,
only
I gotta
other
climb up there.
the only other thing I wanted is like Ellie couldn't swim in the game, and you had to like float her on
Float
little
on
pallets.
fucking pallets?
Yeah, I was
F
just
that.
hoping they would at least do a nod to that.
And the ridiculous way she chucks the ladder down, while I don't find it believable to watch in person, was something right out of the game. That's the way they fall
Exactly.
apart in the game. It's
As
just like,
soon as
what
that-
the fuck?
As soon as that ladder hits the floor, I'm like, oh, here it comes, baby, here it comes.
Not only that, but poor Joel, because he's down there and the thing just comes crashing
I
down. He's like,
know.
oh, what this shit? And yeah, I don't know, bro.
And
Yeah.
Shannon, what would you have done if Karen had kicked the ladder down on you?
So
Pretty bad.
here's I do have like a real question for the moment that we're building to. So you don't see it on screen yet, what she's excited about. When he comes up the ladder and does the initial look around, right? Like she's running up to this place. Is there a viewpoint there to which she could see what she was running to?
She must have seen like their knees or something.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking.
That's what. Not
Yeah,
only
they
that, but
didn't
I
show
don't
the
remember any
camera.
sources of light or anything. Like I don't feel like there was a. She must have.
The
Either
way
that or
it
she went
looked
ahead.
is this was a tarp-covered building with big open sides. There's very easily she could have seen something
Fair
down
enough.
a
Yeah, Joel's
hallway, yeah.
perspective was very dark. It was tough to see. Like I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
was intentional. They don't want you to know
Right.
what the hell's going on here. And I think that even though Joel's mind is what kind of monsters are huddling in the dark, Ellie already knows. I had to throw a ladder to you to get you up here. Like there's probably not infected up here. So she probably being a little more risky than she should be. But
Well, there probably used to be steps, bro.
that's true. Used to be.
Or the other way is there was a person who got bit and ran up there and pulled the ladder up and became infected. Would have been
It's
how I would
possible.
have took that.
Or there
You're right.
used
She
to could
should have been paying
steps.
more attention. Somebody should go back and tell her.
I think the entire purpose of this moment is to make us all that obnoxious person in the movie theater going, "No, what are you doing? Don't
Right.
run off! Don't make all that noise! It's in a zombie apocalypse, bitch! What the
Okay.
fuck?"
Am
He's
I confusing
impersonating
it with
himself.
a previous episode, or is this the same building where whenever he walks in, he says, bad luck because they bombed the place and the building they were trying to demolish?
building we're
yeah,
talking
okay,
about,
same
yeah.
one. Okay, so
Yeah.
therefore it probably wouldn't have a lot of. It probably had a lot of stuff removed, for example,
I think-
stairs and things like that prior to the implosion or whatever they were
Right.
planning.
I think to
Good
answer your
point.
question, what she saw is a giraffe.
yes. Giraffe.
And I think she saw a giraffe. She's like, holy shit, a giraffe. And she chased it.
See,
And this
that's
is what she
not
did.
fair though, because you get to move the plot forward. We all got to dance around the shit until you say it.
So the giraffe was
Yes.
a real giraffe.
It was.
It was awesome.
It was
wasn't
a 13-year-old Maasai giraffe named Nabo from the Calgary Zoo in Alberta,
Absolutely.
Canada.
I was a little bit thrown because a little bit it looked like CG. And when I found out it wasn't the giraffe, it was the
the
background.
Yeah.
It was called out from they basically went to an enclosure where they could feed it off a railing and put this blue screen up, let it acclimate to being in this weird blue environment for a while, and they fed a fucking giraffe. It was so awesome.
Do they still let you feed giraffes at the Pittsburgh Zoo?
I didn't know you ever could feed giraffes.
When I
at
was
the
younger,
Pittsburgh
you
Zoo.
could, because one licked my hand, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Up in the Erie Zoo,
Yeah, I
they
seen that
changed the
giraffe.
enclosures, but their enclosure was set up in such a way that the giraffe could, if it so chose, lean out over
Yeah.
and like pick your hat off your head or something, and
Mhm.
apparently would do that. And we got to see it while they were rebuilding it, so they had it pushed up against the fence like it couldn't go through the rest of its place. So it was really cool to see this giant fucking animal. I mean, they're not as big as like maybe you might expect in magic and mysteries and movies, but like when you're actually in front of it, that's a fucking big animal.
They are the tallest mammal on the planet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And some can be much bigger than
Really?
even the ones that we've seen at the zoo. And that living treasures, you can feed them there, but they're smaller. They're not as big as even the ones at the zoo.
I feel
Yeah.
like even though they didn't CGI it, they used angles and stuff to make this thing seem almost bigger than it was. Its head looked as big as Ellie.
I just think that's how big this fucking.
I do,
Really?
yes, because it was a real giraffe. This wasn't CG. This was
Right.
actually happening.
I
You
sho-
can do things with forced perspective.
I just
but-
saw other people taking pictures in the moment, like when they're on set, and that thing is there.
Wow.
Yeah, and we all seen a giraffe at some point in life. Have you ever seen a Bella Ramsey? You don't know how little she is.
I've seen her standing next to Pedro Pascal,
You
who I
haven't
know is not
seen
very
him,
big,
huh?
and she looks like a midgy little person.
So, did anybody catch the look on Joel's face when she was
I was going
feeding?
to point this.
Oh
There's this
my
look in his eye,
goodness.
like he's just smiling at her. He's not looking at the giraffe. He's looking at Ellie.
He is fully enamored at this point. He's totally taken on dad life with this
Yeah.
girl.
And even when she runs off, it's just like he's almost like resigned to chasing her, and he's
Mhm.
very happy about chasing
Yep.
her down.
Did anyone else think back to the moment where Henry saw Sam to have that same kind of break with Ellie when they were laughing together? He looked back and said to Joel, "I haven't seen him look like that in a long time."
Oh yeah,
And he was
It's-
fixated almost the same way. I mean,
Yeah.
very parallel. I loved it.
Right. So they get this moment, and then she runs off. They chase the giraffe again, and they come out on this overlook on the roof of the building, where they're looking over a ballpark. This ballpark is actually kind of cool because this is from the game as well, where you see this with a tower of giraffes. That's
A
what
tower. You
Yes.
got it. I was wondering when I was going to get a chance.
Oh,
to,
I'm so
so
sorry.
no, that's okay. So not a herd. It's called a
I would
tower.
have called it a herd.
A collective noun
Oh,
of
I
giraffes
literally
is a
just
tower.
thought like you were saying the giraffe is as tall as a tower. I didn't know that was the plural for giraffe.
Which is another reason I think that in your mind in that moment you're going like, this seems unnaturally large, because they're in an upper level of a building and you
Yeah.
don't have no real perspective for how many
Yeah.
floors that is. So you're like, oh,
I heard someone
It's
say,
like
"How
the-
long is this guy's neck?"
It's at least 3.
it's like this scene in Jurassic Park where they wake up with a Brachiosaurus head over top of them, right? It's
Well, in
like, oh,
Jurassic Park, we know they were exaggerated in size significantly. All the dinosaurs in Jurassic
We've all
Park are
done it.
way bigger than they really would be in reality.
Its velociraptors are the size of a chicken.
Got to build confidence, bro.
I was waiting for
Yeah, I
it.
feel like for the
Never
the
measure
newer
from the top.
Jurassic Park, they did a better job representing the raptors in the appropriate size. Not to get off topic, just that's something I've thought of before.
Actually, the raptors are the most relevant part of Jurassic Park to this show, since they've done those exact same scenes a couple
Right.
of times. So.
More about the ballpark. The actual designer who designed the original ballpark in the game,
Was a zombie.
well, yeah, exactly. He was a zombie. He named the ballpark that he created after his wife, Bethany Claire Field.
Huh. That's
And in the
interesting.
HBO show, that's
Bethany
the name
Claire
of it.
Field.
Yeah,
That's
and
cool.
he's like, there was all stuff on Twitter about him, like, holy shit, like
Yeah.
they didn't have to do that.
He's
there was
sitting
no,
at home like,
there was
man,
no reason.
Like that moments like that is like they take the time to really like not just nod to the game, but also like respect the people who like made it and do the homage. Like
Yeah,
I can't think of a better adaptation of like game the movie and like really keep into the culture and everything.
right. The set decorators, obviously, there's fans of this game who are doing this thing. This goes back to the making of, which you can watch on HBO Max, of the making of that came out after this episode, and they would build entire fucking towns, entire structures, entire everything for like one shot. I mean,
Yeah.
they showed things about Billstown where it was a cul-de-sac town with no buildings in it. They built all those buildings.
the sniper scene, just that one, 5-6 minute scene where Joel's making his way
That
up.
entire
That's a
thing.
good
That was
scene,
an eighth
though.
of a mile of town that they built from scratch just for that scene. And
Yep.
yes, that was a great scene.
It was just facade, so I mean, it ain't that crazy. You know
They
what I
poured
mean?
foundation
But it's
so
as-
that they could rebuild structures. Like, I'm sorry.
It's as functional as they needed it to be. So from the outside, but I mean, like in Bill's town, they showed overhead shots of this house. It was just a house without a roof.
Mhm.
Like everything they can get natural light in the top, and then they can just CG a roof in. The same thing with the mall. There was no that whole ceiling. They just blue painted it, and then they punched in a second floor on that mall.
The second floor, yeah.
Yeah, there
we
is
talked
no
about
second
that during
floor,
that
yeah.
episode. It's funny that you mentioned season 3. Did you listen to the
Get in
primary podcast this week?
Not this week, no.
Okay, because they recorded the audio companion right after season or episode 3 released.
Mm.
So they kept referencing back to it. So I thought it was so interesting that you did too.
Yeah.
So sorry,
Just
continue.
that's probably if you want to rank the episodes, that's at least in my top 3 of the episodes of
Yeah.
the entire season. It's on this roof scene that we get the dialogue that we hear at the top of the show. After we've been through everything I've done, it can't be for nothing. This is lifted right from the game.
And from our intro.
Yeah, exactly. And he offers the opportunity to just turn around and go back to Jackson. And she's like,
There's no halfway with this.
yep. She wants
Which is
to
so
be
significant.
she wants this whole thing to have some sort of purpose. She wants her life to have purpose. And, she wants to press on, and he agrees to go with her. And there's a lot of really touching things in here. It's like, after we're done, we can go anywhere you want. When she says we.
Every
Oh,
word
yeah.
she used had a purpose there. Whenever Shannon just said the one line, what did you say?
There's no halfway with this.
That ends up having so much more meaning than even Ellie could have happened to know. Whenever she says the things I've done, she's not saying we've done, things I've done.
She's taking the blame.
Yeah.
Also, whenever she says the things that we'll do, he doesn't fight back like he had previously. Like, you're going your way. You can go to space. I'm going to have a farm. And now it is we.
Yeah. And she even says we can, go back to Jackson. We can get a sheep ranch, or we can go to the moon. The way she says the moon. Like,
And that's what I wanted to touch on, that I was like confused about from the beginning. So she was down and like pensive, and then they went through all this stuff, and then there was a scene where the giraffes, and she was excited and joyous, and then like that scene on the roof, and she's talking about no. So putting all that together in those scenes made me think the whole time she was thinking about like purpose, fulfillment, what I have to do, if she already knew what was going to be asked of her, and like and that's what I took away.
Yeah.
Versus the stuff with the baby or what happened in the episode before. Like, I feel like if there wasn't a scene that kind of said what she was thinking about, but that moment I thought was supposed to be the give you of like what was actually on her mind.
Yeah. So you just wanted to see more of that mental transition for her,
or just to confirm it. But
Yeah.
it did jar. Like, I mean, of course, you've never seen a live giraffe. Of course, you're going to be excited. But like, just to touch where her mind is, I just wanted a little more before all of that to confirm that rooftop scene is like where her mind was.
I think Ellie has very grand thoughts about what she wants to do and what she's trying to do, and it's still not big enough.
Yeah.
She has no idea what's going to be asked of her. That's confirmed by the game creators in the primary show. They know that she doesn't have any idea they're going to do what comes to be. But
I think in my head, she's trying to weigh all the loss that she's experienced and wants it to mean something more than anything. And if you really think about this moment and what she says here in juxtaposition to the end of this episode, it's really kind of heartbreaking, right? Because, this is what she wants to do. And, she does not have a choice in the matter later on.
Yeah. I think the drafts are also just an exhale. I think it's I've been holding this and holding this, and now I have this moment of just pause to like, okay, this is about life, and what am I going to do with my life after this moment? And I think that's what we're seeing here, and that's why the communication kicks more into gear at this point than it did any time up until we got to this point.
can we ask Shannon real quick?
You're going to ask me more stuff about giving birth. I'm done.
No, I was only curious because you didn't know what was going to happen, where your mind was at in this moment. In a way earlier episode, I asked you, what do you want to see happen? And you said, I want to see Ellie get where she's going.
Yeah.
Did you, at this point, have any idea that things were going to get weird, or?
Had not occurred to me. I thought she was going to save the world. I didn't know
There you go.
the sacrifice that it would entail. It hadn't even crossed my mind.
Thought you would just like spit in a tube or something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Give a little blood.
Yeah, you didn't know what was going to be involved in, whatever medical thing they wanted to try.
We'll
I
get
think-
there. I just was so curious. I just wanted to know where you were
No,
at.
it's perfect. Perfect question.
I think it's also a shout out to animals in general, right? Like on why you see like, oh, it's my therapy animal.
Yeah.
It's just because like if have you ever been angry with people in your life and you're like, F everybody, I will punch anybody in the face that comes in here, and then an animal just climbs up in your fucking lap and in
Yeah.
your face, and you're like, oh, screw you,
Yeah.
dude. Like, because they
Melt your
break
heart.
through that shit.
That is
And
what this is.
That's
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
animals do. You know what I mean?
Yep. We'll move on from here, and this is where they come across a medical army medical camp, which actually in the game is a Fedra camp. Ellie is. It's interesting here because Ellie does openly ask about,
Is
is
this
this where?
Fedra?
Well, she asked like, is this with Sarah when you were Sarah? And he's like, no, it was after she was already gone. So she's able to say Sarah without getting
When
the
he
look.
identifies that this is the camp where he came to.
Right. And she's like, I forget the actual question, but she does mention Sarah's name, which is the first time we see her mentioning Sarah's name without a reaction from Joel.
Just to correct
He's
myself.
actually happy to talk about her at this
Yeah.
point. Complete 180
yeah.
from
Yeah.
from earlier. Yeah.
yeah.
She talks about like they were better at stitching him up, than she was, and he points out that he was the guy who shot and missed. And this is where we get the explanation of his scar on the side of his head.
Which
and-
I don't remember exactly how it was posed whenever he first brought up the scar, whenever she first asked him in the earlier episode. But I remember his response being a bit confusing and kind of thinking, like, what does that mean? Now it makes sense.
Yeah. It was in episode 3 before
Was
we
that
get
when
to
they
the
were
main-
walking to Bill and Frank's?
Yes.
Excellent adventure.
Yes. When they were walking up, he's like, how'd you get that scar? He's like, you miss more often than you think. And it's brushed off, but it is mentioned he has a scar, and it's like, it's going to come back around.
There's so much parallel communication in this scene. He's trying to tell her something that we're not really have gotten to in the conversation yet, but he's trying not to say it. Like he's leading towards, I want to communicate further with you. I want to tell you how I feel, but I can't tell you how I feel.
Right. He does, eventually come clean, saying, after the pandemic, it was like 2 days after he had lost Sarah, and he was just ready to be done with everything. And he flinched, and he didn't die, obviously, but he got it. She even says, like, I'm glad that didn't work out.
What a line too.
Yeah.
Love that line.
Yeah.
Laughed openly.
And
So there was
Yeah.
a part 2 where she said, so time heals all wounds.
Yeah.
And I listened to it 3 times.
Aw.
I heard her accent. when
Oh,
she said
Oh,
that
you
hooks
line.
got
up.
it.
Oh yeah, I kept
It was
rewinding.
in
I'm like, yeah,
time.
that is definitely her accent.
there's a couple times.
What I meant by parallel communications was that, he's leading up to that moment where he's basically telling her, I tried to kill myself, without saying I tried to kill myself. And then, she says, I'm glad that didn't work out. I mean, that's about the closest Ellie's going to come to saying, I love you right now,
in this moment, yeah.
I want you here still, and I'm glad that didn't work out. There's just so many more words that those 5 words didn't cover that were said,
Right.
There's also like something to be said to not want to tell person. Like he's essentially, his position in her life is her protector, and 90% of that is with firearms. So like if you're trying out to be somebody's bodyguard or like a sniper, you don't want to be like, yeah, I tried to kill myself and missed.
Yeah.
Like that's not exactly confidence inspiring.
I think this is also the first time where he's actually letting you in on something from his past that, like, we know that she knows about Sarah, but he didn't tell her about Sarah.
Right.
This is the first thing from his past that he said, we're
You're
not going
right.
to talk about our past, that he's actually talking about.
It didn't occur to me until you said that just now.
Yeah.
But every other time she's dug into it in the past, he said, you don't talk about that.
Right.
Or he
Right.
slammed it down
Right.
immediately.
And he's opening up to her so much more
Right.
now.
So
And
not
like,
only
like you said, sorry to get away
No.
from it, the time heals all wounds. His response to her
Oh.
was,
It wasn't that. It wasn't
wasn't
time that
time.
did it, and the
Which-
way he looked at her, that was another one of those.
Yeah.
Wow.
which
oh
is
my.
about as close as Joel's going to come to saying, I love you too.
in this moment.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on that too because like in that exchange of opening up and everything, like none of them, there were no moments that seemed out of character. Like their tender moments were still like their abrasive way of being tender,
Yeah.
their distant way of being tender. Like they did a really good job of everyone being like, oh, they're opening up without like saying anything really sweet other than when Ellie was like, I'm glad that didn't work
Yeah,
out.
not quite as hokey as a punch in the shoulder and "aw
Yeah.
shucks, buddy," but like and not nearly as sappy as "I love you." It was Joel and Ellie's personalities.
Yeah, they
Right.
did
Maybe
a great job
maybe a
on that.
little blended more than before, but that's reality. They're more than one-sided coins. You
They're,
know?
Right.
they're tough, and it is very much like it because you're in that moment, kind of similar. Like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
It's cute.
Yeah, their faces definitely had an expression back and forth, like we're gonna tough this out.
So there's
Do
like a real life kind of like, aside from all this thing happening here, where Joel didn't get to experience with Sarah really the teenage drama of a child, right? Like it
Mhm.
was mostly good times, and that was a very mature kid that took care of him a lot and so forth, and things of that nature. And I feel like, in that moment, I'm thinking like, oh man, you were gonna have days like this with a teenage girl, whether there was some crazy
yeah.
shit happening or not. You know what I mean? And it's like, in that particular situation, I was just like, I feel for you, bro, because you only had those positive days ahead, and now you're like, okay, I'm just gonna try to cheer her up the way I would have Sarah when she was little and shit.
Yeah,
And
he's
it's like
starting
that
to slide
doesn't
her that.
translate anymore,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, Sarah or Ellie's not just spilled the milk or didn't get the date. She's was attempted to be raped by a cannibal. So like her,
And had
her
to chop him.
trauma's a
We're
little
all
more
forgetting the part.
experienced or extreme.
Wow, that is enough in itself. But she also had to chop him up into little bitty pieces.
She didn't have to, but good thing she did.
Annihilated his
Seeing
face.
that would be to me the more traumatic part of that entire
Yeah,
situation.
we don't see the camera from the other side. Yeah,
Right.
And
absolutely.
we just
The
mathed
way-
it out too. I didn't mean to interrupt, but like about 18 months of her life, and she's 14. This is not a significant portion of her life was spent in that Fedra camp under federal rule, being told when and where and what to do, and what life was probably pretty mundane. So the most extreme and traumatic moments, short of her, early childhood, were probably happening right now.
Yeah.
Sean, you one up the hell out of me because like I almost laid that out exactly the same as you did earlier. Is like, man, how much uglier a picture can it be? But I totally forgot about the cannibal part. I was like, the preacher is the worst thing, and it's like, oh no, yeah, he was a cannibal too. That's some jacked up
Yeah,
shit.
I was
Really?
gonna say if like it is, they that last episode where they ended with her and the axe. If anything, it shows how much she cared because she helped feed the rest of that town with the preacher. There you go.
Oh, you
Damn.
went dark. What did
Fucking
happen to
dad
the rest of
joke
the
right
town?
there.
Did they tell us?
I
They
did kind of
had-
want closure on that.
They had venison.
Did Joel just treat them like
Troy-
an obstacle?
I think they just escaped.
Yeah, I mean,
think
if
they just escaped.
you take it
Probably,
based
yeah.
on, particularly in the state that Ellie's in, they're just going. He's trying to like now. I think if they camped out somewhere close by there, you know what I mean? Like if they're like, okay, we're gonna go back here and settle down for the night. He absolutely waits for her to fall asleep, and then he goes murders every individual in that town.
Yeah, really.
Can I ask?
Didn't they get on a boat? Didn't somebody tell me they got on a boat? Because they're like wandering off. Or they're heading toward a lake at the end of that episode. And I swear there was some off-camera conversation.
Troy
Maybe, all
just-
right, maybe I
Troy
dreamt
Baker
it.
just said that they were either at their homes or they left.
Okay.
That's all he really said.
No, but I meant Ellie and Joel
Oh,
after
okay.
after
Oh,
they
how
left the
they
town.
left.
How they
I
left.
don't know.
Okay, all right. Never.
Yeah.
Can
sorry,
I just
forget
ask
said
a
it.
question about Ellie's psyche at this point? I mean, her life experience, like we just said, was the Fedra Academy. Up until
Well, she also had to put down her best friend.
she had to kill her best friend. She gets hooked up with some psychopaths, ends up in a city that ends up getting eaten by monsters after it, consumes itself. Then she goes from there to a relatively nice place where they're not really too afraid of sitting dogs on people. I mean, is her mind at all, I wonder, going, is this worth saving?
What, humanity?
Yeah.
I don't think she's in that place now.
I feel
No.
if anything, it would probably be like I have a sense of purpose that like
Yeah.
But
it's
no
not
small
my decision.
part you don't think has been
Would
offended
you?
by reality? Yes.
I
As a
don't think
matter
I
of
would.
fact, I
Apparently.
would.
But my thing is you're thinking of it from a point of like what's normal. That was her normal. So like
Right.
at best, she's like, maybe I can make everyone be like they are in the
Yeah.
Fedra camp.
Yeah,
You know?
no, not only that, but better, right?
Yeah.
Like it isn't I'm trying to save this world. It's I'm trying to bring back the world that I only know
From
from
books.
stories and books that I've read. So
Well-
in her mind, it's she's trying to write the world into something better than what she knew before.
I agree. But in her mind, in my mind,
I can't tell
She
you how
is
many times I had to
fighting
explain an argument with my
demons.
wife. In her mind, in my mind.
there's
Gotcha.
demons going on. She's got things that she's confused about. I think that her confliction just made the story richer for me.
Right.
Now, so this is speculatory because I didn't
We don't
play
do
the
that here.
second game, and I tried to pretty much avoid anything about the second game. So I know like tiny little tidbits. But I feel like where you're going in your mind about her may be where she ends up in a future place, but I
Okay.
don't even know.
Okay.
Again, I can only say that. So if it's right, it's not a spoiler.
Ed's doing his little
'cause it's a guess.
smile, head, eyebrows bouncing thing. Apparently, I bit onto something.
No.
He says, "No."
He's like, no, you're way off.
You're dumb.
They continue where they leave off from here. Let's just say that.
"Can you be
Hey,
more
now.
wrong?"
Now,
Yes.
guess what time it is?
What time is
Tool time.
I was hoping shitty pun time.
it? Shitty pun time.
Oh man,
Yes.
this is how we know they're
They,
better.
they catch their breath from that emotional moment, and it is time to decompress with some puns. Do you want to fill us in on what these puns were, Shannon? Do you have these?
Yeah,
written down?
I actually do. Here.
Of course you do.
It says people are making apocalypse jokes like there's no tomorrow.
Topical.
Damn.
And he's like too soon. She says too soon. He says topical.
Let's go, Sherry.
What was the next joke?
All right, this one's stupid. Moon rocks taste better than Earth rocks. Why?
They're meteor.
They're meteors.
That joke was fucking terrible.
That was
But what was the
terrible.
next one?
All right. What did the green grape say to the purple grape?
What?
Breathe, you idiot.
I didn't get that. one.
Yeah, I feel.
to-
I'm glad you said it because I'm. Wait, what?
Because you're turning purple.
Oh, God damn it.
Oh, wow.
Dumb.
Hold on.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Okay.
You're right.
I just saw
All right,
Wade
that
having
simmered.
I
That-
saw
that
Wade having an
took me a
epiphany.
while.
He was just like, oh.
I'm not fucking the shit out
Before
of
I
you.
did, that's all.
Oh my God.
I was like, that has
Um,
nothing to do with
and they're good
wine.
times
Grapes
interrupted.
don't breathe.
Yes, their good time is interrupted. And in the back during that last joke, you're like, there's someone behind you. They get a flashbang thrown at their feet, and they are,
Flashed and banged.
flashed and banged. Exactly. Joel is more banged than well, I'm not going to say that next word.
More bang
Uh,
than flash.
Oh no.
That was your
Yeah.
fault. That was your fault.
Joel
man.
takes a butt to the head and gets a little bit rocked a little
We've all
harder
been
than,
there.
Yeah.
Yes, he does take a butt to the head. And he does. The next scene is basically him coming to in the hospital where he sees this red splotch on top of this plastic thing, which turns out to be the Firefly logo. So the Fireflies have found them. They finally made it. We can all rejoice and
It sure
turn off
looked,
the TV.
looked like blood on the table when it first came
It did,
onto
it did.
scene. I'm looking at like, what kind of horror show were you about to wake Joel up in? And then it focuses into the Firefly symbol. It's a weird relief. It's a
Right.
weird sense of relief.
Yeah. You know that they've made it there. This happens kind of in the game, although there's a big action sequence that leads into this with them trying to get there. And actually in the game, what happens is there's it's an underground, like flooded area where Joel falls into the water. Ellie has to save him or tries to save him, at which point he's trying to basically resuscitate her. We don't know what's going to happen to her in that point. And as he's resuscitating her, these Fireflies come by and clock him on the head. So at this point, we wake up in the game. We don't know what's going on. Now, in this part in the TV show, we
We have a better
saw them
idea,
take
yeah.
her, but we still don't know what's going on. She informs them that they're prepping her for surgery, that he can't go see her, that they believe they can cure, they can create a cure based on what they find, what they've discovered. And, Joel basically says, but cordyceps grow in the brain. This is the connection that's made that like whatever you're doing is going to kill Ellie.
And this is where the Fireflies fucked up. And let me tell you why. It's because if they had told Ellie what was going to happen, she probably would have consented. In my heart, I believe she would have chosen to sacrifice herself to do
Yes.
this. She would have had an opportunity to convince Joel this is what she wants, and maybe convince him to turn around and move on rather than happening the way that it goes.
I believe the only thing that was going to stop Joel was Ellie stopping Joel, and she never got the opportunity. And this is the part, again, this is the thing we're going to have the big discussion about, is the right and wrongs of this, is that, she says that she was sedated before she even knew what was happening. It's like, well, you never gave her the choice. Right. She might have chose what you want, but you don't know that. It might have got to the point where they ask her and she's like, there's no guarantee this was going to give a cure. It's not like he's putting an end to this cure. It's like, you don't know.
You don't. But I mean, if you're weighing odds, to me, I think this is what makes this game good, though. Like, that's what makes the property good, is what follows, and particularly the discomfort you feel as playing as Joel. This is very much the moment in Game of Thrones where Bran Stark gets pushed out the window, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the holy shit, I can't believe they're doing this. Like, wow, this is interesting and it's different, and
Right.
it is not like following the stereotypical tropes of storytelling.
I agree, but what a reach to do those two parallels of.
They happen at opposite too. One's in the first episode. This one's
first
in the
and last.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got nothing. I've like also like I feel if Marlene wasn't there when Joel woke up, I feel like it would have went right into like,
oh yeah,
all hell broke loose. And the thing that like I wanted more answers for, but I don't know what the right word is, but like Marlene was head of the Boston QZ, and now we are completely in Utah. Like
Marlene's ahead of the whole Firefly.
So, but when she introduced herself, she was just head of Boston. So like the fact that like, oh, I guess I'm like a plot hole person kind of thing, and it was like weird that like she was also in charge there. But like I feel like if it wasn't Marlene that was there when like he woke up, it would have instantly kicked Joel in a badass mode.
If you remember, though, these group of Fireflies apparently have been moving from place to place to place. So she would have been the ranking officer, if you will, in this
there
group.
You go,
Yeah.
Not only that, it doesn't take a ranking officer. It just takes somebody else getting killed by one of the 100,000 things trying to kill you to have that opening be there.
Plus, I mean, she knows Ellie. I mean, she is the one who ostensibly raised, maybe not raised her, but by proxy raised her, put her in the Fedra schools to be raised.
And she's probably the one person in that camp too that also, like, in that facility that knows that, yo, this girl's
special.
This is the one. Yeah. Like I arranged for her to be here.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it was also like at that moment where like they at least explained what was going on, where like I feel HBO covered a big step that was missed in the game, because like I said, they never really stated in the game why Ellie was immune.
Yeah.
And like what they were trying to
I
do
didn't love that
in the situation, because like I hate when like you have a whole show premise, but like the earlier plot hole is never like established. Like for example, it was a hard sell for me to get into The Walking Dead, because like it started like, you know, Rick's a cop and blah 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 blah, and like he gets hospitalized and a guy comes in like, hey, there's zombies, and he's like, okay, and I'm like, no, not okay. I would have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Why are there what happened? Or he's just like,
see,
okay.
I'm the absolute opposite.
It just started.
I way preferred not knowing, because the way they lined out the science didn't really fit in the way my brain worked. So like not having an idea and leaving it in that realm of the machines and the blips and the whistles that I don't understand almost made it an easier pill for me to swallow. You know what I mean? That's me. Personally.
I don't know. I think that the way they tackle the immunity is completely cromulent here. I mean, I think it does play into, there was something that came through the umbilical cord that would have given her a taste and allowed her body to adapt.
much like a vaccine would work.
Very much so. Not only that, but this actually paints like a really, really fucked up situation, right? Because I think at this point, if you don't mind, I'll jump to dialogue only. But later on, Joel says like, "Oh yeah, no big deal. Like a bunch of people ended up being immune, and like you're not."
Oh no, we'll get
Yeah,
there.
I'm
We got
sorry.
you're skipping.
I'm
so
sorry.
much.
Just the dialogue. just a dialogue. Okay. So, but if you're drawing back to that moment of how she became, like, what are the chances that anybody else on this planet
Very rare.
had
Yep.
that circumstance where mom was bit, but the baby survived and the umbilical cord was cut at just the right
a
time and the
very
kid found safety?
Yeah,
Like,
rarity's
you-
not proof of concept to me, and
It
I
is
I agree with
not.
Joel Ed though here that it's like not super important. You know, what I mean, it wasn't a deal breaker for me one way or the other. I didn't like it, but that doesn't mean it's
Well, I
like-
mean, if we're not here to just like hash out details that don't matter, what the fuck are we
But it
doing?
also-
I do beg your pardon. I'm
Talking to the
sorry.
microphone.
It also removes that whole Deus Ex Machina thing where it's just like it's not just this is the solution to the problem. We're just going to invent a solution to the problem. There's actually a reason for her immunity. It's not just magic. So I actually think that does work out because it gives you a reason. Plus, you get to have Ashley Johnson in your TV
Yeah.
show.
I like thinking maybe she just had
They
a
coulda
high
had her without
midichlorian
this.
count, though.
That's it. Yeah, there's that. That's a perfect example of how not to do it.
Exactly. Here you go.
I just
Right.
want to point out with the scene we were discussing with Marlene, that after the game, I was very much bothered by the idea that they didn't just lie to Joel. Like it seemed to me at the time that it would be really easy for them to just be like, "Yeah, we're taking care of it. Bye." Send him on his merry way. Leave him
wasn't
scout
gonna
him.
Oh, he wasn't
So-
leaving, but you could have bought some time.
Marlene's presence at that point shows to me that she has not underestimated exactly how dangerous he was. Like you said, Wade, that she's the only reason he didn't hit the fucking wall as soon as he woke up.
True, but
And not lying to him shows that they respect him enough not to try to bullshit him, because if they did, it would have gone wrong.
but also
I mean, it did go wrong.
Marlene didn't know
Well,
that
took their
they've
best shot,
grown
sorry.
together. Like Ellie was
Right,
cargo.
very
She
good.
all
Yeah.
and Marlene's like, Joel doesn't
Yeah.
have a heart.
Yeah.
The reason he got there is because he's just a cold blooded dude. She even said like, "You're the last person in the world I wanted to owe one to."
Right.
So
'Cause-
she couldn't have had any idea that
Yeah.
her giving him this news would
Right.
affect him the way that it did.
Right. Not only that, but like I'm actively like going through the different potential outcomes here as you're discussing. Like, oh, this is not a good way, and I'm thinking like, no, I don't see any situation where Joel doesn't do what he does.
No,
right?
yeah,
Like if
yeah,
you're like, oh
definitely.
no, she's cool, she's just going and giving some bloody, be like, take me to her now.
But
There is no situation when that motherfucker wakes up where he is going to accept being segregated from her. He is getting to her one way or another, and any excuse you give him is going to make him suspicious or mad.
right, but I also understand why Marlene would underestimate that
Sure.
bond.
Oh, yeah.
She
Yo,
just
Wade's
like you
on the
said,
money.
did not know what they went through.
Right.
Yeah.
You got it, Wade.
Yeah. I mean, she goes on to explain what this procedure is. They, determines that it's going to end up killing her, and she's letting him go, which again, you could say is a mistake. But again, this goes back to your point. She doesn't know what's happening here. She doesn't know this connection. And she just thinks if I send him on his way, here's a memento of your travels and her switchblade, which is just, that's what
Ooh.
sets him off, I think.
Also, I did want to touch on it. I totally forgot. I'm glad you brought that up. At what point, when Ellie as a baby is dropped off to Fedra, and they're like, "Hey, did she know the switchblade came from her mom or anything?"
Yeah, that's a good question. Like,
Like,
oh,
she
like
just
"Here,
always
keep
had
this
it."
switchblade with the baby.
Yeah, like, how did she know where it came from?
It's
Is
not
it-
said explicitly, but I'm imagining there's something there. There's also something that goes back way to the beginning of the show when when Marlene's coming up the stairs, you can hear Anna singing a lullaby to baby Ellie. You can't make out what it's saying, but of course, internet has figured this out that this was an Aha song. So this goes back to the fact that she has an Aha cassette. I mean, there is some connection that somehow Marlene has been able to filter down to her, because clearly they didn't have contact before the first episode. She didn't
Right.
know who she was.
She didn't know who Marlene
But
was.
she's been filtering this down, maybe passing her cassettes, maybe saying this knife, she doesn't say she knows it's from her mom, so we don't know if she knows it's from her mom or not. She just has a switchblade, but she covets it. In the very first episode, she opens up her bag and takes that switchblade out. That's the first thing she goes for. So she must know what that switchblade is. And of course, Joel knows what that means. That's, she's not going to need it anymore. And this is what, pushes him to the edge. They have the other Fireflies escort him off the property. And this happens in the game too, where he kind of stops, like, I didn't tell you to stop. And he just takes that gun, shoots the one guy, shoots the other guy in the knee and says, where the hell is she? I don't have time for this. Boom, that guy's dead. And it is on.
Let's not say it right now, but do you have in your notes later in the scene to bring up, what was it, one of our kids came into the room and said, "Oh, they should have done
Oh,
this
yeah,
if we
it's
were
in here.
doing it."
It's
Okay,
in
cool.
here.
Just making sure.
So anyhow,
Y'all can
in
wait.
I think it was somewhere along the way, one of the creators, and I don't know their names. I'm
Neil
sorry.
Druckmann.
Craig
No,
Mazin,
it wasn't
Druckmann.
him. It was the other guy. So
Abasi?
Craig.
and they because I don't want to steal this, but it was well said. It said good and bad can be motivated by love.
Yes.
And I was like, man, that hits it right on the nose. What's about to ensue upon this hospital? Because I mean, it's a choice: save
Yeah.
the world or save this girl.
Yeah. The whole series, and Craig Mazin lays this out every damn time he's interviewed, is that this is a show about love and what love can motivate you to do, whether it's good or bad or whatever it is. That's what this show is about. And this points it out expertly. You know, he is making the choice between the good of the one outweighs the good of the many. That's exactly, it's an old Star Trek thing.
Yeah,
It's like-
hey, Spock.
yeah,
Good to see you,
exactly.
Spock.
And he's making the decision that, you know, she's more valuable than everyone else. But again, that's not the choice he's making. We don't know that everyone else would be saved by her dying. There's no guarantee of any of this. So he goes on this rampage, and I love the way they bring up the music and lower the volume on the rest of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And he caps that first guy right through the window. I'm like, damn, it's on. And this is the same scene. You go through this in the game where you're walking through, just basically mowing through all these people to get to your destination. And you
In the
break through
game.
these doors, and there's a long hallway. And in the TV show, there's a long hallway where you're just walking down, and that score's coming up. He goes through the wash area where the surgeons would wash up, and you can see them through the window.
Which is like in both the game and the show, a real big message, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's just strolling through mowing down. Because if you think of no matter which parallel you're drawing, the game or the show, every conflict, every gunfight, every struggle has been so drawn out and difficult to overcome. But in this moment, you better watch the fuck out because he's bulletproof. He's invincible. He's going to walk right through anything that you have. And it's like
This
a really
is-
powerful statement about where he is mentally and his parental instincts for this kid. You know, I think it
And-
paints a picture.
And not even like just like where he is. There were people who surrendered, and he's like, I don't care. Cap,
Yeah.
like no survivors until I get Ellie
Yeah.
and like anyone in the way. Like
It-
no questions asked.
It is a little video gamey where he kills a guy and picks up his weapon, takes that weapon and moves on, and then takes the weapon and moves on.
But the gun the
It's
guns
smart,
were
though.
empty.
Yeah.
Like they
So,
at least said why.
Retrieving the knife, was that in the game? Retrieving her knife? Because he does take her knife from the second person he killed.
I don't know if that
He
knife,
takes it out of his pocket.
Well,
Marlene-
he's
Marlene
going.
gave him the knife when she sent
well,
him
no,
on the way.
She gave it to the guy to give to him once they
Yeah.
released him.
after
so
he shoots.
after he
Yeah.
shoots him, and so I was just wondering if that was something from the game.
I don't remember if he does recover the. I don't remember if that scene happens where Marlene says, "Give this to him after you're clear," which would invite that next scene. I don't know if that happens. I'd have to look that up.
Does Ellie have her knife in the second game?
She does.
Well, because he does
yeah.
retrieve it. It's just
Yeah.
I was wondering again.
Well,
that-
he's
whether
looking
this
for
was
video
straight
game
to the-
continuity.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Asked.
I see.
Yeah. You know, he busts through the door. You know, she's on the operating table where they're going to do whatever, and
Brilliantly, our daughter happened to be sitting there eating dinner watching this with us, and she said, if they were going to do brain surgery on her, why didn't they shave her head? I think, though, they were still
Is it-
prepping.
Well,
Yes,
no.
she's
Here's the
different.
explanation. I've only come up with it in this moment
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for
because of
making
our
me-
previous
Thanks for making me
conversations.
bring it up.
Because they specifically tell Joel she did not know when she was going under that she was going down. If you shave this kid's head before you put her under,
Yeah.
good point.
I mean that's a pretty good indication that we're gonna jack around with your brain, kid. So
Or
if
we
like
just
you're
need hair
trying to be
follicles.
cool, like you could put her down and then shave her head. Like there ain't no reason you
Right.
couldn't shave her head
Well,
while
anyhow,
she's under
we thought that was
anesthesia.
pretty smart of her. When
Oh,
she
very
said
much so,
that. We're like,
100%.
"Okay, right.
When he does come through that door, he has a confrontation with the doctor, and the doctor decides to bring a scalpel to a gunfight, which is a really bad idea. He does not hesitate. Now, in the game, you are given a QuickTime event, which is basically a button press to go ahead and kill this doctor.
And Corey's told me that he struggled with that part.
I don't remember what I struggled with anymore, but I remember the whole point, this whole end of the game. Like when you get to that point, it's
Yeah.
like yo, I don't want to do this.
Didn't you try to like find ways to move on without?
It was a long time ago.
And this is the point of the game. They give you that decision, but it's a non-decision.
Right.
You do not have the choice. And people were like complaining about that. It's like, this is the game we wrote.
Yeah.
This is the choice that Joel makes. You are not Joel.
Can you go into further explanation? So can you jog my memory? Because somebody said if you wait long enough, and what it's essentially asking you to press this button to execute the person, and you can sit there and wait, but nothing happens, right?
Correct. You'll just sit there.
Somebody said like, oh, eventually, and I'm like, I don't know. I remember sitting there for a long time, feeling like,
Which is
I do
really
not feel
interesting
good
because
about
it's a
this.
video game,
Right?
and that you would still have that like
That's a
Like I got
total
no
sign of a
problem
game.
running over hose in Grand Theft Auto, but that moment was like,
It wants you to think about it, but you don't actually have the choice. That is the goal of that scene, is to give you that moment to think about what's going to happen here. But if you don't do anything, the game doesn't progress. And now you do have a choice after you kill the doctor to kill anyone else in the room.
yeah.
And in the TV show, he does not. He
Right.
does have them on hooker. They turn around. We do get an appearance from somebody here in this operating room. One of the nurses. Her name is Laura Bailey.
I thought you were saying Dr. House.
I'm not familiar.
They bring back a lot of people from the prior games,
Okay.
but she wasn't in the prior games. She is
She's-
a voice actor in the next game.
Oh, okay.
So she gets a little cameo of
The
her
Next
own.
of Us.
Yes, the next of us. But she does get a cameo. So Laura Bailey is in this scene. She's one of the nurses. Don't remember which one. It is important to note that they don't get shot, and of course they do make they show that doctor on the ground. It's pretty gruesome as he carries her out of that room. And in the game, it's really interesting because there's this klaxon going off, like this alarm going off as he's carrying her through the hospital. And you're just making your way to the elevator. It's actually a little bit more tense in the game than it is in the TV show, where you're trying to get to that elevator. And as the doors are closing, they're like shooting at you through the elevator doors. He heads down to the parking garage.
is this a cutscene? Him walking to the elevator, or are you playing this?
You're in control of
You're-
Joel, but you can only push him forward.
Okay, so there's
Yeah.
you don't have to shoot back.
No.
This is it's
You can
set so
stop
that
and
you
listen to the
You're gonna
alarms
get out of
longer.
there.
It becomes a cutscene the moment Marlene pokes her head out. And that's when it becomes a cutscene, where they have that conversation. And what's interesting about the conversation here is, he's saying, you can still change this despite everything you've done. And the next thing you see basically is them in the car. And at this brief moment here, you don't know that if he's left Ellie behind, if she's been able to convince him that like Ellie needs to stay behind, until you see her in the back seat. At which point he starts piling on the lies to her, saying that there's a bunch of other people, that they've given up looking for a cure, and then that they got attacked and he barely got her out of there. She does ask if anyone was hurt. I don't know if he actually answers that question.
He said yes.
Yeah, he says,
Shannon, just so you don't have to ask, everything from here to the end of this show, directly from the game.
Well, then what am I here for?
there are
enjoy,
differences. There
comment,
are
react.
differences. So he's laying on all these lies on top of lies, and basically building this web instantly, to where he has no explanation for. And intercut with that is the actual interaction that happened with him and Marlene, where he shoots her.
Marlene's number 18, if anybody was counting.
Oh, really?
Damn.
18, and what
Did
was
you
it?
count or did you Google that
I
shit?
counted it.
Good
So
for
I
you.
could be wrong, but I counted them.
So that's the number of people in the hospital he killed?
That he killed, plus then Marlene. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
He loads Ellie into the truck and then goes back and says, "You just come looking for her." And it's Dandridge's performance here, where she's on the ground. I'm like, because she played this before in the game, I'm just like, oh. And this is the one death that actually kind of bugs me. It's like, he kills absolutely everybody, and you can almost understand that these are nameless people. But of course, we get to someone we know, and she's on the ground basically begging for her life, and he's like, "You just come after her," and just knocks.
Did it look very much visually like it did in the game?
Practically identical.
Because here's every once in a while, I don't play these games,
Of course.
but I've seen them. I have played, but it's been a long time and stuff like that. But that scene with her on the way that she was even on the ground looked so straight from a video game to me. That
To see
I
her in her
thought
mocap suit.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing. I think what happens in this moment is it paints a very clear picture. Joel is not a different person than he is at the start of this show. like at the start of the apocalypse.
Yeah.
He just has a daughter again, but that does not change who he is or what he is willing to do. Ellie is the only person that is inside of that circle with
Yeah.
him, right? Like the only person, and that just makes him more dangerous
Yeah.
because that's something for him to care about losing.
Yeah. I also don't think it's a
That's
choice.
true,
I don't
yeah.
think it's necessarily a choice between losing her and keeping her. It's like, or, saving the world and keeping her. In his mind, that's all it's about, is keeping her. There's an unknown on the other side and there's a known on the other side. I'm going with the known. If I do this, I get to keep her. But at the same time,
No, it's not that.
yeah,
No, it's not the difference between potentially losing her and or like saving the world and keeping her. It is losing her. Like that is
yes.
the one definitive that he has done before
Yeah.
is lost a daughter.
Right.
And in his mind it is not, oh, she might not make it or she, this or that. It is, I've done this once, I am not doing it again. There is nothing that anybody can tell me, there is nothing that can convince me to sacrifice another
It's
daughter.
sacrifice and
I can't do-
also a failure.
Sure.
I'm sure that he feels that he failed Sarah, and now he doesn't want to fail Ellie.
Yeah, especially because it is told that she has not been told of this. And, Marlene says, he tells Marlene, it's like, you can't make this decision for her. It's like, neither can you. It's like, well, ask her. I'm like, well, she is.
Yeah, there was no informed consent, people.
Well, plus she's 14 years old. Does she? I mean, that's not his father, of course. That's not her father, of
It's
course.
also the apocalypse.
Right. But does
how-
she have the authority to make that decision on her own behalf?
Well, so okay. Also, to touch on that, like Marlene was paying Joel to bring her. Like Marlene already accepted ownership. Like this is going to save people. Like,
well, maybe
it is just like she is a vaccine, not a person. Please get this vaccine to the people.
But
so
it is her best friend's daughter, so we have to imagine there's some.
And she does say that it hurts her too, but she's looking at the big picture. She didn't just spend the last year and a half with this girl. She doesn't have any like personal connection with Ellie. She does with the mom.
And ostensibly, she's never had any real connection with Ellie other than the fact that she put her in that. I mean, Ellie doesn't know who she is.
Yeah.
Do you think if Marlene had like spent the last year with her too, she'd have been like, "Hey Doc, maybe just try pricking her finger first and see."
Marlene didn't lose a daughter, so I think that's, like you said, that's a big piece of the puzzle.
I was being facetious. Obviously, I think in this moment, Marlene is thinking for the better of the world, and it is a terrible, terrible decision, right? Like, I think in her mind, she assumes that if there's a hell, I'm going to it. But it is
who's she and what's the terrible
Marlene.
decision? I'm confused.
Marlene, in her mind, I figure my mentality on her is, in her head, she thinks if there's a hell, I'm going to it. But if this is the only potential, and it's not a surefire, sure bet. But if there is any possibility that we can reverse this to save future generations or to even potentially recover people that are still, we've had that conversation, are there still people inside of these creatures, right? Like,
you think she's looking to get her ticket punched to heaven?
No, I don't. I think that she's just thinking that, like, this is going to damn my soul and torture me forever, and it's just going to be one more terrible decision that I've had to make. But if there's any potential here for it to reverse the course of history, then I have to take it.
Yeah. I also think it might just be she feels in a weird way indebted to Anna, like to, while this may kill her, this will save everything. And I think that is a weird payback.
Yeah,
maybe
like some
maybe I'm
homage to the fact
stretching.
that that's how she died, and just to kind of, right.
But again, I guess my biggest problem with this in terms of the morality of it is that she was not actually given the choice, and they're both being selfish. Both Joel and Marlene are being selfish. The only one who can answer this question and has the right to be selfish is Ellie. Whether she wants to do it or not, you can't make someone.
Why I said they fucked up, because if they had just given her an opportunity to consent to this procedure, I think that would have.
They didn't want to take the chance.
All the problems.
Yeah, they didn't want to take the chance that she'd say no.
Well,
and it's obvious. after this, after the scene in the truck, it's obvious that, like, you're not quite clear if Ellie's buying all this. We do flash forward, and she's basically checking out the scar on her arm, and the truck has given up the ghost, and he's like, it's just about a 5-hour hike, but we can handle that, which is a flashback to the original, like, I think episode 3 again, where they say it's about a 5-hour hike to Bill and Frank's house. This scene is from the video game up until the point where they're having the conversation about her being not girly. She's like, Sarah was girly.
She's like, it's okay. I know. I'm not girly.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not girly. And basically comparing the two together. It's really sweet because he's struggling to find the words, and he can't, of course. As they're walking, this is where she comes clean about the first person she had to kill. This is where we learn the speculation we had is the first person she had to kill was Riley.
So this is the second of the two huge questions of this entire season. One was, how did she become immune?
Yep.
And then the other big one was what actually happened between, which we all, I think, kind of speculated what ultimately ends up being the truth. But it's good to kind of put a button on it.
Right. And, she basically says that they would lose their minds together, and, Riley turned and she didn't, and she had to put her down. And it's like, you realize that, that has informed her curiosity about this the entire time, from the very first time where Joel's beating down that Fedra soldier, where she's looking over, like, in curiosity, like, oh my God, like, this is what is going on here. So, I mean, and at that point, he's trying to assuage her guilt over that. At the same time, she interrupts and says, swear to me everything you said about the Fireflies is true.
Yeah.
With no hesitation, like full dad mode. Like, yeah, kid. Yeah, I swear.
I mean, there is a beat there.
Yeah.
But he's like, I swear.
Well, you know what, too, like, if you had any question before this moment about how Ellie feels and what decision you think she would make if she was given the option, you go back to, I'm sorry, it was Sam and Henry. And that moment where my blood is medicine, where it's like, I had to try, like that. We know that back to that moment,
blood wasn't good enough.
Right.
Well, she wants to be the savior.
Probably not only that, but like at that moment too, you got to figure that she's trying to answer a question to herself too, because it's like, could I have saved Riley?
Yeah.
If I'd have known that I was infected beforehand, you know what I mean? Like if we would have just did a little blood brothers kind of thing, that might seem silly, but I'm like putting myself in this character's mind and thinking,
she's a 14-year-old girl. She's allowed to.
She wants to know what her purpose is.
Right.
And that's why she's so despondent in this scene, is because she thought she was going to save the world. She thought she was special. Now she's being told that she's not. And then what it's all for? What is it all for?
Yeah.
And Joel's taken that from her.
Right.
And doesn't realize what he's done.
And also just the story of what he made up, like, like,
oh, you're not special.
Yeah, there were dozens, you're not special. Oh, and also there were raiders and people got shot, and but you got out okay, and we'll get you clothes, and all that. That's what happened.
Yeah, moving on. Let's move to space and have a farm. Like, what does he think is, like? I don't know. You're right. He's not thinking this through for her. He's doing it for himself. He's being a little selfish.
Does this kind of feel like a parent being like, oh, I can't afford to buy you any presents, so like, Santa said you weren't good enough this year.
Oh, that's awful. And you're right. It is. It has definitely feels that way.
And just to put the button on that, he says, I swear, and there's this long beat, and she doesn't say, I believe you. She just says, okay. And like when they were walking up there, I was like, I know exactly what the last word of this entire season is going to be, and it's going to be the word okay. And she fulfills that, and credits. And it's just like,
hold on. There was also, hold on real quick. There was a scene way back with the drafts where she said the view, about the view.
Yeah.
And then he takes her at this last scene up there, and he's like looking at her, waiting for her to say, you can't beat that view, but she doesn't say it.
Oh yeah. That's something I didn't pick up on. Yeah, you're right.
Nice.
Yeah,
sorry. Okay, go on.
No, you're right.
I wanted to put that in there.
This begs the question, and of course, I have my thoughts. Does she believe him?
No, absolutely
not for a second. No one. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so either.
I think she wants to believe him, but I don't.
I think she's disappointed.
Yeah.
I think her okay is like, okay, yeah, I know there's something you're holding. She doesn't know what, but something he's holding back. And, this can't possibly come back in the future. But it's just, this scene, and it's left on a cliffhanger. When the original game was made, there was no intention to make a part 2. It was just left to sit out there, and
Just
for the
stew
past
with what
past 10 years, people have been having this discussion, and Troy Baker's mentioned it's like this is amazing. We've been having this discussion. Did he do the right thing or didn't he do the right thing? And now
Wait, how far apart
millions
was
of
it
more.
between the first game and the second game?
Ooh.
Well, before the first game, second, but this decision to take her by force. The game came out in 2019, 13,
Yeah.
2013. And now, of course, the people who played the game and knew this discussion, and this has been arguments on the internet of how was this the right decision. Now a whole millions of more people get to have the same conversation.
And it's funny because I feel like the second game came out like what 2017 ish.
I
something
forget
like that.
specific. Yeah, actually, just a couple.
Was it just 19? So I have the game. I never opened it or anything, and I just assume it was like a prologue. I didn't know it continued.
It continues.
Yeah, I mean, I saw clips and I figured it would go back and forth, but now watching it and hearing about like season 2 and 3 or whatever, and I'm like, oh, it continues. So now I'm like, oh, I need to go dust that game off and fire that up because now I'm super curious.
In my mind, Wade's like, no, I ain't pulling that Band-Aid off. I ain't going back there.
It's like Joel shouldn't have did it, or Joel could have did it. I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
And it's funny too. I went back and listened to the IGN Podcast Beyond spoiler cast from the original game, where they basically the game came out. Now they're going to do a complete spoiler podcast, and it's funny. You don't have to know that this podcast is 9 years old. It sounds like they're talking about the show. And this is how faithful the game is to the TV show, that you wouldn't know until they talk about very specific other things that they are actually talking about the game 9 years ago than they are today. And they're having the same exact conversations. Greg Miller, who used to host that show and now is on Kind of Funny. He's basically saying that like he finished the game and he's contacting people at Naughty Dog's like, I'm the fucking bad guy? What the hell happened? What do you mean? How am I the bad guy? He's like, no, it's a little bit more convoluted than that. He's like, no, I'm a fucking bad guy. I just murdered like dozens of people to save this one girl. And this is the same conversation.
This is the way.
Interesting. Yes, it is the way.
That is the way. All right, so I have a question.
Go on.
I'm going to start with you because you picked it on me earlier.
Oh, yeah.
If you were Ellie and you could save the world and you had that choice, would you?
Are you asking me if I would sacrifice my own life for the rest of the world?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Wow.
If I was Ellie, yes, because like, you cared about Riley. You somewhat cared about Marlene. You don't know if she made it or not. You had Joel and Tess, but you were Cargo. And then you had Sam and Henry. Like, all you have left is Joel. And like, you don't, want to leave Joel, but really, your life kind of sucked. You had drama with people at the Fedra camp. You lost your best friend.
Puns in
like,
Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah, so all your happiest moments were stricken by tragedy almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, I would assume if I was Ellie, I would do it.
Yeah. Corey?
Yeah, I mean, so like Sean looks like a big dickhead when he answers that question, right? But like, I think that anybody, and like, this is going to seem maybe unfair, and I'm super sorry if it is, but like when you have a kid, like when you have kids, I think that as soon as that transaction takes place, there's automatically this piece of coding that goes into your brain of, okay, I will trade myself for this person. Right? Like I will trade my life to keep this person alive.
Okay, but Ellie doesn't have kids.
No, she doesn't, but you're talking about the entire planet.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and again, but I'm not Ellie. I can't speak to being Ellie. I mean, I'm speaking from my perspective. Right. And that might be the difference between my perspective and some others, but of course I would.
Yeah.
100%.
I think it would change depending on your age. I think as a teen person, you have a little bit of invincibility, so you don't necessarily know what death is. You don't know what it is like to give that up. And you might want to be that person that saves the world. That might be something you want. I think as you get a little bit older and you realize like you only get one shot, then you might say no. But then as you get even older, you're like, well, I've had a good run. Maybe my sacrifice would be worth something. So I think it would actually change throughout your life. I think
I agree. And that's how I come to my answer. Me, myself, if I'm speaking personally, Absolutely, I would. As long
Yeah.
as long as I could say goodbye, you know.
Yeah.
But as a 14-year-old teenager, they're awfully selfish. So you wonder, and it is a different world.
Yeah.
I do think she has that hero. I don't want to call it a complex because I hate calling it that, because it's not, because it's wonderful hero deep down inside of her.
Yeah.
She wants to do something right. And I think that that's the way that she wants to do it. Will she now, if she knew though, that she had to give her life, I think she'd still do it.
Yeah.
I can't help but think of Shannon's struggle all day to try to find a Simpsons quote.
Oh,
And-
yeah. So,
And this very much brings me to a Simpsons moment. And I go, I wonder if I would be Homer, because his dad's kidneys blow out, right? And his dad needs a kidney. So he's like, oh, yeah, of course I'll give you a kidney. And so, like, they're sitting in the operating room and, like, they're having this touching moment. And then, like, Homer kind of realizes what he got himself into. And then, like, Abe looks over and he's gone. And Homer's running through the field. He jumped out the window and his ass is blown out of the back of his gown. And I'm like, would that be me? Like, fuck yeah, I'll do it. And then you lay down in that bed and you're like,
wait, what?
shit, I don't know.
No. I mean, on the flip side, though, if you were Joel and you have now found solace in this new little girl that is you have now deemed as your daughter, regardless if she is 100% compliant, would you have done the same thing?
I go full
That's a
Joel.
good question.
Start with Shannon. Go ahead.
I think, yeah. I mean, having kids myself, if it was one of my kids, I would sacrifice myself, but I would not sacrifice them.
Yeah.
That would be a much more difficult hurdle to climb. And maybe if again too, if they said they wanted to do it, I might be a little more supportive. But if they were done like the way that they did Ellie, then absolutely I'd shoot as many people as I could to get them out of there, you know.
That's my difference. I'm thinking like, would I do it? And I'm like, I wouldn't have been able to kill like that first guy. I just did like an outline around him, and he would have shot me right between the fucking eyes. Is the difference? Now,
would
if
you
I
versus
was,
could you?
Yeah, right. Like if I was
Skill-wise.
if I was Die Hard, if I was John Wick, would I? Yeah, probably.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I might not have killed that doctor just in case I changed my mind.
shot him in the
Because
foot.
like, would it? Yeah, I mean, like,
yeah, that's a good
that's
point. You know what?
probably the only
Fail
one
safe, right?
that could
you need
do
a
it.
fail safe.
Right? Like, and I think that's probably part of why he does that. Like, okay, if
There's
I
no
take
going
away
back.
this guy, like there's no more reason to come after her. You don't got anybody that can get what you need.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, obviously, I don't have kids, so it's hard for me to say. But obviously, I do love my girlfriend. It's just I can't imagine someone taking that away from me, and it must be tenfold for a child. And
I thought you were going to go with a cat.
A cat, I've had a cat before.
Right.
No, but I
Fuck
mean,
you,
it's
you
just
didn't
like
take my cat.
If someone. No, I can't imagine. No, I don't know if I could actually be Joel and actually shoot people and kill people, but I think I'd be highly motivated.
You'd at least write to the complaint department.
Yeah, I'd draft a strongly worded letter. I disagree with this, but yeah, I think while I don't know if I could actually commit the acts, I would definitely do everything I could to save that person.
Sean?
I didn't have my hand raised.
No, we went around
You're
the
the
whole
person
group.
that didn't speak.
You're the
We
last one to
skipped you.
speak on it.
We skipped you.
If
No,
you were
you
Joel,
are Wade, but
I guess I'm the last one, but you're the next one.
Yeah.
If you were Joel, in that situation, would you have reacted the way Joel have reacted, or would you have?
I don't know. I don't have kids. I think Joel is the idealization of how a parent thinks they would react. I don't think any parent actually would react like that. I don't think any of you would react like that much as you wish you could.
Even
We just don't have that animal instinct in you.
Oh,
you can't say the other way though.
What's that?
Think
I
about it. You
feel like
can't
I
be like,
could.
no, yeah, I'd give my kid.
not in any other
No,
circumstance.
You
let
can't.
me say yes.
I know she would
absolutely.
too,
one.
but
I am fully on board with you guys that I would probably rage like a bull and get my ass murdered. I am not Joel. I wouldn't overcome that obstacle.
No.
I probably would.
He was
try to-
possessed.
What
That's
I'm
not the
saying
question.
is, you cannot say, "Nah, I'd give up my kid." You know,
given the
like-
knowledge of my skill set versus what Joel is capable of, I would attack that from differently. Is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
You'd
murder
write a letter.
everybody right off the bat. I'd probably be stronger than that, but it wouldn't.
but
I don't agree with
That-
what
but
Joel
the-
did.
no,
I
the-
don't think Joel was
right.
entirely out of options. I don't know exactly what else.
I
he
agree
did.
with you on that 100%. Absolutely.
you think there were other options?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that there were. I know that we didn't get a chance to ask. I think Joel figured out what he knows how to do well, and he did it.
Yeah.
Um, so on that, so if even if you say he's not out of options, like they said, Ellie's being prepped for surgery, like in the next 10 to 15 minutes, she will be no longer with us. I feel like whatever options you have, I don't think you can expend within 15 minutes. You have to
Right.
make a choice and jump at
Right.
that point.
Yo, you just made me think, like, did Marlene fuck up? Should Marlene have just been like, oh, she's already gone. We already did
That's
it.
what Shannon was saying.
Yeah, is that exactly how you put it?
There are a lot of
Like,
ways they
Well,
could have
but if you would have
approached it
just
for
been
sure.
like Marlene probably would have gone, but she went anyway. But like maybe he don't go looking for the doctor and shit, you know?
So to
He probably
No,
looks for the body.
Well, no, I'm just saying like I think we covered that where it's like she doesn't know the connection they have. She has
Right.
no way to
Yeah.
evaluate
That's
that
true.
decision.
that is true.
Sure.
So if it was me, so like the same way I thought, like if I was Ellie, how I would go about that. My bad. Like it's like I'm Joel. I lost my daughter. I lost Tess. I built this bond and imprinted like Twilight. My daughter is now Ellie. Like, what else do I have? Like, granted, he has his brother. He could just disappear with Tommy and live in a village in Wild Wested or whatever they do in Wyoming. But it's like we did all this. Like she saved me from, after I've been stabbed, she got me medicine, I saved her from these things. Like literally, what else do I have going on in this apocalyptic world? I think 100% I would have just been like, Joel, I really don't feel like there's nothing else to lose at that point.
So like I'm in two places right now where I'm just amusing the shit out of myself because on one hand I'm thinking like, well, like all these questions we're asking, you may as well just ask, what if Neil Druckmann wanted to make a happier video game? But on the other hand, I'm thinking like, well, if we don't ask these questions and like we aren't going to have these conversations, like what the fuck are we doing this recording for?
Yeah.
So
this is one of the reasons why I agreed to we should do this podcast. Like I knew these discussions would happen. And it's like this game has a storyline that's I've thought about, and I've never been in the conversation because I'm at home playing the game by myself, and it's just people online. Actually, to have people to talk about this with is, this
Awesome.
is what makes this awesome.
And like, I've played lots of video games, I'm sure as you all have, and like, but there's so many stories that stick with you, and because of how this ended is why this story like really sticks with you. It won so many awards. Like it was a well-made game. There was great mechanics, but the story is like what gelled all those other things together.
Right.
And the reason why it was good enough to make an adaptation, and like the reason we're talking about it, is a good story that prompts you not only with questions, but like goes against the grain of what you think will happen in certain situations, and then like throws a lot of the facts in your face.
Right. Absolutely.
Well said.
I also want to jump in here and talk about our legacy actors who were in the game, who made their appearances. Meryl Dandridge as Marlene, Jeffrey Pierce as Perry from, was that the fourth episode? The bearded fellow. Troy Baker as James, Ashley Johnson as Anna, and Laura Bailey as the nurse, which, again, you guys will not know who she is.
But your kids are going to love it.
But your kids are going to love it.
Okay, Marty.
Seeing these actors, bringing them in, giving them parts.
I understood that reference.
Exactly. Giving them parts to actually play and to be a part of this, seeing them like talk about it on, online and be like how awesome it was to be a part of this. They never had any expectation.
Yeah, whenever you join up to be part of this video game, I guess you don't have that expectation that one day you're going to have a cameo in a TV show on HBO.
And it's like, Troy Baker said he would never want to be Joel again, at least in this adaptation. It's like, let Pedro do that. And, but he was happy to be even asked to do anything. And I guess he was saying, Neil Druckmann's like, I think we have a part for you. It's going to be James. He's like, oh, that's awesome. I can't wait. He's like, who's James?
Not someone I've voiced before.
Yeah. As opposed to every single other person he's voiced.
And the episode prior, the gentleman who got hit with the hatchet at the end, he was the maker of the game. Is that correct?
Troy Baker.
Was that Troy Baker?
Yes.
Oh,
he was the voice of Joel.
Oh, he was the voice of Joel.
Where she's on the table.
So to mimic his inquiry, Who the hell's James?
Yeah.
He was just like, and even in that episode,
David's
the behind the
sidekick.
scenes, he's like, I got stabbed with the hatchet. He's like, this is so cool. I'm just glad to be here. Like, that's so dope.
Absolutely. Did anyone have anything else that they wanted to add on here before we wrap up? Do we want to talk about the season as a whole? What did you guys think? Are you stupid excited for the next
I
season?
am really excited. Can I say real quick? Wow, you have this inside knowledge, all of you, for having played the game. I think this being surprised is probably more exciting.
Yeah.
Have you ever like watched a show and somebody else gets like Game of Thrones, somebody who's never watched Game of Thrones? I'm like, oh man, I wish I were you. Because to be able to live that over again, that excitement and looking forward to it, I got to do that.
Yeah.
And then I also was able then still to kind of like try to pick your brain, Mal. And thank you very much for holding steady and not sharing too much with me, even though I would be persistent and asking so. But I'm very much looking forward to it. I love this season.
Do you think that you will try to play the game?
Okay, so maybe Corey says I won't, but
she said on the internet she might.
It's not that long.
Wow.
I
it
want
depends on how
to.
bad you are at video games.
I'm not really good with the controller games. Do you know what I mean?
Here's the thing, and I also want to.
Not even so much good. It's because I think that I could probably grasp it. Do I have the patience? That's whether or not I have the patience.
She doesn't have the years of practice of muscle memory of where the PlayStation buttons are on the
give
controller.
me a Nintendo controller. I'll
well,
kick
like
your ass.
she plays on the VR where like most of it's motion controlled, and it's like there's very few buttons, and most of them are kind of intuitive to what you would be doing with your hands in that situation.
Yep. Right.
So there's not that curve, and it's like when you're used to playing, it's like, oh, I played PlayStation 2, 3, 4. It's like if the last thing you played was GameCube, this probably is a
that is probably the last video game console that I owned and played on a regular basis.
I want to say though, with the remake of this game, redoing the engine
That's
and everything, that they've really enhanced the accessibility options for just about everything about this game. You can make it as easy or as hard as you want it to. There's pages of accessibility options that they've added to this retroactively with this new part 1 remake that they did. And people were asking, why did they make a remake of just barely a 7-8-year-old game? And it's like, well, because they knew the show was going to be good and it was going to sell copies. So they wanted the best available thing. They took a lot of what they learned from part 2 and put that into part 1 to make it look better, play better, and be accessible to as many people if they desire to pick up a controller.
So that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get more players.
They saw what happened with The Witcher.
Oh, really? Is that a video game? I didn't.
Yeah,
know
The
it was a
Witcher.
video
Is a video game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's at least 3 of them.
Yeah.
Because the
Wait,
one
I
I
thought
played
it
was
was a
The
book.
Witcher
I didn't
3.
know it was a video game.
It was books, then video game, then TV show. And when the TV show come out on Netflix, everybody went back and started playing the game again,
That's
and they sold a bunch more
to do
copies.
A podcast
There you
about.
go.
And so I think that's like they're going and anticipating like, oh shit, like a lot of people are going to be coming back. Let's make it good.
So I think I'm like kind of in the middle between you two, where like I remember the gist of the game, but there were definitely parts in the show I was like, did that happen? Like the whole cannibal town. I was like, was that in the game? I don't remember
You're not
any
alone.
of that.
He said the same thing.
And I'm like, okay, cool. So like there was still like excitement for me because I'm like remembering some things, and then I'm like, oh, that's new, and I'm like, oh, okay, they did something different, and but like the little behind the scenes after every episode really just gels all that, and it like also gives you, like they said in the first episode, little breadcrumbs to follow and catch on to. So like it's very common in video games where you have like Easter eggs, when they're like, oh, you find these things, but like it isn't as common, at least to me, to see that in shows where like they also leave breadcrumbs for things that'll happen.
Well, any show that's made after a video game, or Easter eggs from even books and things like that too. You often see.
Exactly.
Wade, do you feel like, because I don't know where I am right now, do you feel like, oh, I want to play the second game? Or do I want to see the show first, or do I want to play the game first? Because I have the position of having played the game and I've seen the show, but I could theoretically see the show and then play the game, and it's like,
No, I definitely want to play the game first, because like that was so like Shannon's excitement is like from like I haven't played the game, and my excitement is like I remember that, and like oh this part was really hard for me, and like so like I'm 100% going to play the game first and then like compare afterwards, because like that was some of the joy behind it, because I also have a lot of friends who never play the game that like were not into show at all. They're like, this isn't for me, and I'm like, is it only cool to us because like we play the game? So getting your opinion, who was a fan but never played the game, it's like, oh, okay, it isn't just
Oh, because they did such an amazing job on this show.
yeah,
Where they really
because
did.
there are other game adaptations where like or like show adaptions like for example, I hate even bringing this up, but like I like anime, and this isn't anime, but
Super Mario Brothers.
no, I'm scared about that. But like Avatar: The Last
I was talking
Airbender,
about the old one.
and like I loved Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they made that a movie, and you will be 1,000% lost if you didn't watch the show because they ruined everything in that movie. It was so bad. But like, and it was such a great world and great story. I really wish someone reopens it, and there was like talks.
Yeah.
But anyway, so like I was like, when I heard about Last of Us, but I was like, I really love that game. Even if they mess it up, I'm sure it's going to be a good time. And I'm like, wow, they not only like exceeded all my expectations, but I was like, yo, this is the new standard for like if you're going to do something like this, how to go about it.
I don't think it ruined anything for me having the game knowledge. I mean, while I knew what was coming, seeing how they would do it changed me almost from a show watcher to like as if I had something to do with the game, or with a TV show. Like, oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do this. Let's see how well they do it. Let's see how well these actors actually pull this off. And it almost gave me this weird pride, like, yeah, this is how good this shit is.
And I've been here since 2000, whatever.
Yeah. I get to be a hipster doofus and say I was a
Sean
fan.
hasn't gotten to say his piece.
Go ahead, Sean.
Don't worry about me, guys. Just go on.
I think that this show and game is almost a best case scenario.
Yeah,
because they are able to stick so wholeheartedly to the game, but have so much empty canvas to work with because of what happens in between the trekking and like as much as it is a story and theatrical type of game, it is not. I would say that's what 20 to 25% of the actual game, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
for the amount of time that you're out there and you hear the little dialogue shit, but like mostly it's a survival game where you're getting from point A to point B, and it's like a survival horror game. And so there's so much like room for them to interpret what happens in between and stay so strict to the base notes of the story that you can watch it, know exactly what's going to happen, but feel like you gain something out of it instead of just watching what you've already seen before.
Right. So, question with that, and this is something I brought up with my wife because she's not. Well, here, how would I put that? The game is a survival horror game.
Yeah.
The show is what? What would you say this genre is?
Soap opera. It's beautiful, but it's
post-apocalyptic drama.
It is not a horror show.
No.
Like there weren't very moments where like I was like, oh, scared. Like they really like. If I had to complain about anything, and I mean, and I once again, I love the show. I thought it was amazing. Is like there weren't many scary moments. There was great development in characters and great story, but like a core part of the game was like you being scared.
Yeah.
And they did not avoid, but like that wasn't the emphasis of this show. They really wanted to hit the story.
Right.
Do you feel like that might have been influenced by the fact that so many people out there already know exactly what's going to happen? And it's like, we know these two characters are going to make it to the end. So how do you make the majority of your audience, like, even if you haven't played the games, right? If you've seen a picture of two, you like go, oh, like Ellie's there, right? You know what I mean? So how do you put stakes in that? How do you feel like, oh shit, they might not make it, right?
Once again, I thought the second one was a prologue because like that whole Riley thing was like DLC that I never bothered with. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm sure that's not important. It is important. I should have went through that. So like I thought the whole second game was a prologue. So like now that I know it's like not, I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I'm now doubly interested.
That has been the one refrain that I've heard is like, not enough infected, not enough interaction with them, and how that's a thing. Now, again, I don't care about that, but I can understand why people want that. But I think the creators have made over and over again the attempt to say it's not really about that part of it. It's about existing in this world where infected exist, but we're still focusing on these characters and their interaction with themselves, not so much the world.
It's about giving some of those special effect makeup artists some work, man.
There you
Come
go.
on, let's do it.
You know what though? Like this is actually in a very special place too, where they can just say like, "Yo, if you want more of that." Particularly if you're somebody who hasn't played this before, like we have all had that and gone like, oh, we know how terrifying this is, and maybe it doesn't capture that. But if you want that, the game's there. Not only that, but there is a new remastered version of that game. So it's like, if you want that, you can go get it and you can experience how fucking terrible it is to have to deal with a clicker and go, shit. I need wood and a piece of metal and some cotton so I can make a shiv.
Where's the next workbench so I can craft my weapons? And,
right.
And like there were very key parts where like maybe it's because of like how I play the game where I'm like, wow, this took me forever. And they were like, boop. Like was it the end of the first episode where they're going through the tunnels and like to escape? I was like, that took me forever. And like they were just like, 7 seconds, like we're now here. There was something else I wanted to
I'm with you with on that. While you think about that, I was very much because I haven't played it in so long. I remember so little of the story. And that like the museum scene where they see the first clicker, I was like, I feel like this is 20 hours of my gameplay right here was just, please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. They're right there. Like, that shit is
if you
anxiety inducing.
If you want the opposite, like no story and just all the action, if you watch, I'm going to name drop this guy again because he's amazing. He's a speedrunner for The Last of Us. And basically, so he's just going through all the nitty gritty and skipping all the cutscenes and just blitzing through this game in just under 3 hours. It's an amazing feat of knowing this game. He's been playing the game for like 10, well, not 10 years, it's only 10 years old, but like the last 6 years, he's been playing this game over. And I don't know how anyone can dedicate their life to playing one game.
That's a different type of OCD.
But it's an amazing thing to watch someone blitz through this game, all these encounters with lightning precision.
I remember. Was it episode 3, the whole Kansas City thing?
4.
4. Okay, so
3 and 4.
Yeah. So my whole thing is like, okay, like it is it's a survival show with a story. But at the end of that whole Kansas thing where like the crater opens, like I'm like, oh, okay. Now we're going to start getting more infected. They introduced a bloater. Like there was a random children zombies. Like I was like, oh, okay. Now we're going to get it. And they're just like, nah. Just that one part. And I'm like, but that's such like a core part of all this is killing and avoiding these things.
It's a whole dump truck worth of money, man.
That's true. That is true.
Very true.
We're talking about HBO and Sony. Yo, they got it, the money. And like as I'm thinking about that with you, and I'm looking at Sean's facial expressions and shit because he's gotten very quiet because I said something dumb or something. I do feel like definitely there were moments where it's like, you know, you're choosing the episode length, right? Like 47 minutes here, blah, 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 there. Like we could have been in for 5 more minutes on one episode. Like that's really all you needed to do. Like if you have the episode, like maybe it's not a great example. They are trying to show that there's safety out in the wilderness away from dense populations. But like in that moment where they're out camping for the first time and they can't have a fire because they don't want to attract attention. But any one of those situations, if you get in this moment and it's like, oh shit, you show them having these infected people being a regular obstacle in their travels just once or twice, just to paint the picture of like the people that didn't play the game and don't know how much they show up of like, no, this is a constant occurrence of something that they would have to bypass to make it from point A to point B.
I feel like also like if you never played the game and you watch this, you would think the game is like 40% infected problems and 60% bad people. It's like you deal with more bad people than you deal with infected based on like how they kind of did the show.
People are easier to deal with though.
No.
People
are way harder to deal with.
In the game?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, when were you walking around in a game and a clicker flashbanged you? Huh?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like the clickers I didn't want to engage with.
You can avoid them.
Yeah,
You
like,
can't. It's
but
really
but
hard to
that's the
avoid humans.
thing. That's the
More
thing.
flashless bang.
Yeah. Wait, hold on.
Just like
I feel
math
like
symbols over your head.
I feel like I chose the wrong option. No, but that's the thing is like the people. I got no problem. Like I think in a lot of video games, that's how I approach it. Like, don't get me wrong. I'll stealth out like to try to be sneaky and shit like anybody else. But like there are moments when I want to be Miley Cyrus in this motherfucker and come in like a wrecking ball and like in a fight against a human being. I know what's coming. I know how to like it's not that big of a deal. Like, okay, like yeah, it might be a little bit tough. You gotta watch your resources, but cool, like you know what's coming. But with the clickers, dude, with the infected, you're like trying so hard to do the right things to not engage that when you do accidentally trigger them, your shit's just up here.
madness.
It's like, no, I just spent 20 minutes tiptoeing around here and I stepped on the glass and now my whole shit's fucking ruined and I got to do this shit all over again.
I've used all my resources.
Where it's like the people, there's an option. Like clickers, you cannot hand fight a clicker, right? Like if you don't have like you can escape them in a grapple or something.
You have to sneak up on them.
Infected, you can sneak up and kill. I don't know if you can kill a clicker unless you have as a sneak up unless you have a shiv.
Right, and you still have to sneak
But
up
they
in
are
that
blind,
situation,
so
right?
you can get by them.
Yes, but my point is like once they're on to you, you're pretty much screwed. Whereas a person, it's like if they're on to you, you can like hide behind some shit and they'll shoot at you for a while, and then like you can still go back to sneaking around or approach it and roll up in hand-to-hand combat if you run out of bullets. You don't have to have like when I remember just feeling like if you didn't have the exact perfect set of circumstances, like your day was wrecked.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I
You're
can't
wrong.
remember. Probably, I can't remember if it was Last of Us or Left 4 Dead. There was a scene, well, in the game, where you had to go to a basement or something and run a generator to power something you need to get past, and the generator just attracted everything.
Last of Us.
That was Last of Us.
Yeah, it's a hotel scene.
I really wanted that in.
A lot of people said that. Yeah.
I like that was such like I said, I played the game 5 years ago. I very remember that. I can't remember the word. And like that was just an example vividly. Thank you. Example of like just like you had a goal and you wanted to achieve your goal, but you had to deal with this infected to achieve your goal. And I feel like that really wasn't a theme in the show. It was like there are infected, and sometimes you will encounter them, but you don't have to deal with them to achieve your goals.
I think their idea was just efficiency. They want to tell the stories, not spend too much of HBO's money so they get a second shot at it. And maybe next season or two, we're going to get a lot more infected, I think. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in the next seasons.
Yeah.
Well, especially since we know they're not going to be cured anytime soon.
That's true.
Not if Joel has anything to do.
Anyone have anything else to add at this point?
They need more clickers.
More clickers? That's the consensus.
And bloaters.
And bloaters.
I'm really happy with this season without
too.
the clickers. I do think coming in that I certainly felt
There would
that
be
I
more,
would
yeah.
see more.
Yeah.
I saw a significantly less than I expected to. Still, though, a really good show.
Excellent. Well, of course, I want to thank everybody for joining me on this ride for the entire season. I really appreciate that. Really enjoyed getting together with you each week, talk about the show, this game. Looking forward to doing it again next season.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Special thanks to Wade Rue for the original music at the top of the show, very much, and the closing music we have here coming up. Where can people find you on the internet?
Wade.
Thank you for having me. It's youtube.com/DreamSlide Productions. You'll see a lot of my original productions, covers, and tutorials of how you can produce music yourselves.
Excellent. And if you want more content from us, while this is the last episode of this season, of this series, keep an eye on the Podcast Junkies Facebook page and see what we're going to be getting into next. We are going to be taking a break, but we have a few ideas of some future deep dives, and we'll keep you updated on the Last of Yin's socials, such as Twitter and Instagram at Last of Yin's, on Facebook, the Last of Yin's podcast, and as always, you can email us at thelastofyins@gmail.com. Until next time.
When you're lost in the dark, look for the light.